My brother and I, when we'd fight, our father, he would put tape over our mouths. Tape. Like sticky tape. So he'd stop talking. And it makes us go out in public like that. Like we'd play tennis on the weekends. We have to wear tape over our mouths. That's public shaming. You're amongst all your kids, your peers. Like, why is your mouth taped shut? We couldn't tell them why, because their mouths are taped shut because we were being fear of being beaten again. And it's like, well, people aren't physically laughing at us, but you can't not feel self-conscious in that. You're going to chats and you're going to the shops. You got tape on your mouth. Even though your dad's out of eyeshot, you've got that fear of God in the back of your mind. You don't dare take that tape off while you walk around the shops on your own, window shopping and whatnot. You got tape on your mouth. I'm sure it does affect me still in some ways that I'm not even aware of. Don't know. It's just a part of my story. You can't try to deny yourself of your history, of your upbringing, of whatever it is. And if you rip out that chapter, you rip out those lessons. You rip out the ability to heal or to grow from them.
Okay, we're starting the podcast off. Eugene Teo wants to know what a threesome is like. Okay, we're starting off strong.
Assume, I would want, depending on who's involved, I'd want a little bit of ground rules laid down.
Yeah.
Like if it's the devil's threesome, you got to make sure, hey, don't make eye contact.
Yeah.
And don't touch me.
And you got a safety word?
Yeah, safety words.
That kind of thing.
Okay, that's for the private after hours podcast later.
Yeah.
Eugene Teo. Did I say that right?
No, you did not. That was a horrible attempt as well. I never heard that one before.
And we're done.
Yeah.
Eugene.
There we go.
I'd love for you
I could just be like Cher or Prince or something. Turn me into a symbol.
I'd love to pronounce it accurately. Teo.
The amount of times I've heard people say Teo or Tao, I think maybe I've got it wrong.
Like gaslighting you. It's like, have I got it wrong my whole life? Mum.
Who's to say what's right and wrong? Like, just because I've always heard it one way and even my parents heard it one way, maybe there was a bit of a loss in translation.
So I was right. All right, we agree. I was right.
Yeah,
okay.
Tao.
Eugene, we were talking about business and that you were I was asking you how you think about you've been going so hard and aggressive for so many years in growing your business. And then you said to me you were slowing down a little bit, or you were picking your decisions much more carefully about what opportunities you pick.
Yeah.
How do you think about that now in when you started going really hard and consistently versus the opportunities you pick now in what gives you the biggest ROI?
So it's kind of like a simple way to analogize it is the training. And I think so much of what we do in life can just be analogized to training. Like quick side tangent. I remember I went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within weekend years and years ago. I was like, this is cool, but all the lessons here are the same lessons you get in the gym. Like perseverance, push through, one more up, keep going, you can do anything, break those barriers, unleash your power within. But anyway, back to answer your initial question though. Me choosing things and the training analogy there is when you first start training, you want to do as much as you physically can and you're excited all the time. You just want to throw yourself into everything and just get incredible results. And you dabble so much. But there comes a point in time where the more you do with your training, you don't get more. There is an optimal amount of output that you can get from the inputs that you put in. And there's also going to be a finite amount of inputs that you have to give, like to training or to business or to life or anything it is. And it's about saying, okay, the first few years or the first period, because I don't want to even put it down to a timeline of years. For some people, it could be decades. Some people, it could be weeks. Some people, it could be months. But the first period, the first part of your life cycle that you go through is about accumulation. It's about exposures and accumulation. Get as much as you can to understand more about yourself and more about the world that you're interacting with. But then at some point, the turning point will come to you when you realize your finite capacity and where you have to start reducing. When you got to say to yourself, okay, what do I like? What do I enjoy? What am I good at? Where am I best serving my time? Maybe it's in powerlifting. Maybe it's in bodybuilding. Maybe it's in CrossFit. Maybe it's in archery. Maybe it's in badminton. Whatever it is, and then you start to hack away at what is not helpful and conducive to what you really care about or what you're good at and where you need to go towards. Same thing with business. I was all about saying, I'm just going to put out as much content as I can. And there are many, really smart business people now saying it's all about just put out the content as much as possible. And I still agree with that. I say if I can just flip the switch now and 10x my content, it's probably going to be a net positive. There is also a fine line to sort of toe here of saying if you just put out more stuff all the time, it's also going to increase the noise that you're putting out to your audience. And it can be really annoying. Even if you put out something different every single time, something engaging every single time, people will just get sick of your fucking face.
Do you think that's more of a self-judgment insecurity that we have as creators and educators? Or is there more evidence from that you've observed yourself where you've gotten feedback?
When it comes to putting out too much?
Yeah.
I haven't had the exact feedback from somebody saying, oh, don't do this, I'm getting sick of it. But it's something that I can observe just from the analytics. I look back at it and say, okay, what is the click-through rate? What is the flow of the acquisition of a customer down into a member or whatever it may be, or even something so simple. Like you don't need to have those business systems set up. You just look at it and say, how many DMs do you get? How many messages do I get? Not even related to a service. People interacting with me. Like we have the most powerful thing on Instagram, just being able to see how many people viewed your story in the last 24 hours. Like for a lot of people, it's a popularity metric. It's an ego inflating. I say, look, okay, if I post a shitload, if I dropped out 100 stories, which is the max amount of stories you can post in 24 hours where I start deleting themselves and stopping you. I've tested this.
I didn't even know this.
If you post out that many, you will get significantly less story views. Not because you're less popular, but because at some point people are just like, you know what? I just can't get through this shit. Yeah. There is too much here. And the people who really fucking love you, they're going to get all the way through it. Maybe if they've got the time to watch through 100 1-minute clips of you in their day. But even then, they're going to stick around anyway. But you can see directly, dynamically, what the cost of doing too much volume is. And you've got to find the cadence. And it will vary. And of course, that's only one example of it. And even that is not a perfect study because that is open to a lot of conflation or confusion from the way the algorithms work. Maybe today Instagram decides I'm not going to share your shit for no reason because I don't like you.
And you've put in the reps, right? Like you've done the work for such a long time. And so was there, like aside from the metrics, like on the back end there, was there any other like influences in you sort of like making that decision on return on investment and going, like, was it a thing where you recognize, well, it's going to force you to put your time into the best quality stuff and just putting that out there? Was it like spending that time elsewhere, like outside of business?
Yeah, not necessarily. Like a lot of as much as I try to avoid it and don't like to always admit that, but 99% of the moves that I make and the things I think about these days are business. Not in terms of how I can make more money, because I don't care about that, but more so about how do I create the biggest impact. How do I and that is going to be innately tied to business. Whereas like I want to have a positive impact and it's what I enjoy and what I'm good at and what I care about right now. I'm sure that will change, but where I'm at right now, that's what I kind of keep an eye on. So for me, when I started looking at like ROI and things like that, it actually came back down to content and something as simple as YouTube. But even like if I was really critical about it, I could have seen it earlier on Instagram. But it wasn't until I started really taking YouTube a lot more seriously and a lot more strategically that I realized, oh shit, I can spend, let me think about this. It's a lot easier to make a video that will get 1 million views than it is to make 10 videos that'll get 100,000 views. And I'm pretty sure I stole that quote or I'm reworking it from Mr. Beast. And that's very much what I've started to realize is I can spend a lot more time, a whole month on one video, but it can be a fucking banger and it can reach a lot more people, have a much more positive impact and actually be less work and less stress for me than trying to just pump out volume all the time. I've got to get something else out tomorrow or whatever. Like I can see it even just in if I'm looking at my YouTube analytics right now, one of the latest videos I posted, collectively, even though it's like 2 weeks old now, it's still collectively evergreen-wise getting more views than several other videos I've posted. I can collect 10 other videos I've done in the past 6 months and compare it against this one video. This one video is doing better because I put more time and effort into it, into delivery, the pacing, the editing, everything to make sure that it was something that was going to do well. It was manufactured to do well, as opposed to the other ones where I was like, oh, I've got to get something out new this week. I've got to pump out something for the sake of pumping out content.
What have you learnt from, so the second part, pumping out content for the sake, that feeds into the principle of consistency, which we all agree is pretty important. But then there's a trade-off to that of just putting things out just because you said you need to be consistent versus the first one, which you said is take more time, spread my workload out to get the work done at a more preferred pace with a different quality. How do you think about the balance between those two?
Well, it comes down to like for who, at like what point in there, again, that fictitious life cycle of their business journey or the personal journey is where are you at? Do you need more consistency? Do you need more reps in? Or do you need more refinement and optimizing? Like for training, when you're in your first 5 years of training, you just need to do shit. Doesn't matter what you do, just do shit consistently and you'll figure it out. 5 years to 10 years, 10 years to 20 years, you need to be optimizing. You need to be worrying about that nagging shoulder. You need to be worrying about that little lagging body part or whatever it is for your goals. So it comes down to where are you currently at? And I'm at that point now where I've done, as Ben says, like I've done enough reps. Well, there's always more reps you can do, but I've done enough volume to be able to say, okay, this is the answer to the formula for me right now. And it might change. I might pivot slightly in my business in the way that I do things. I must, I need to get more reps in this style of creating content or outreach or whatever it may be, or acquisition of customers.
So what are the patterns and behaviors that you've noticed over the years that have resulted in the greatest ROI from from a content perspective? Because you've really grown significantly in the last maybe 3-4 years. You surely would have noticed things of what works and what doesn't, and how you could pass that on to a younger generation of health professionals and coaches and educators.
So I look at it and like what's worked for me is, and this is going to sound kind of airy-fairy, but listening to my body and to the responses and I guess the reactions of the audience you're working with, where even if you are in that initial first life cycle, you just got to pump out shit. If you're really not feeling like it, you're really not feeling up to it, or you feel like your audience isn't really being responsive to it, don't just keep putting out more shit. You've got to self-assess and say, okay, maybe this isn't working out for me. And again, like I love to use the training analogy because we are all, we get the gym, and most people listen to this kind of thing, they'll understand the gym. In the first 5 years, just fucking do anything and just learn from that. But the just learn from that is what people don't do. They just do a lot of shit. And they're like, I'll just keep doing a lot of shit and doing more reps and try CrossFit next, and I'll try bodybuilding next and try this next. No, you should be looking at it and saying, okay, the last thing I did yesterday, or the last thing I did last week or last month or last year, what did I get from it? Did it land positively or negatively? What can I change? Because it's not just about doing reps for the sake of reps, it's about every single rep you do, you should learn from. So for me, or for other content creators listening to this kind of stuff, is every video you put out, don't put it out for the sake of being consistent to some random schedule, because nobody gives a fuck about that anyway. None of that matters for the algorithms. What matters is the content you're putting out, is it exceptional or is it better than what you did last time?
And I think that might be like a little bit of a gap in like the education that coaches are maybe putting themselves through, like when they're trying to go through that push phase of consistency with content, right? It's because you can go to any fitness, business coach, pro person who's going to try and grow your business, and they're going to tell you the consistency. They're going to tell you to put it out, but maybe they're not then getting that feedback about like, well, what kind of quality was it that you put out, and how can you ensure that the following day's quality is 1% better? You know what I mean? And I do wonder about what that feels like on the user's end. So we have so many potential clients or the public you're trying to reach, and there's like so many coaches doing that learning phase, you know what I mean? Where they're sort of like tripping through, learning different content and stuff like that. And, but it is like, we can all agree, it's like an essential part of like getting to that level with public speaking, with articulating, with growing your business.
Okay.
He's synthesizing. You can see it in his head.
That's it. How do you do that then? How do you reflect on that? Knowing what works?
You've got to be comfortable with being a dick to yourself and being objective. Or having somebody, not being a dick to yourself, but just being objective, or having somebody to bounce off and say, look, this is why it was shit, in an emotionless way. Like every time I post up a new YouTube video, I'm editing a new YouTube video, I will always edit it at least half a dozen times in separate sessions. I can edit it all in once and it'd be done.
So you're looking at it from different angles.
I look at it, I give it a night's rest.
Yeah.
I come back, I have Katrina watch it, and I'm watching her. Because she won't be able to verbalize to me what she likes and dislikes, but I can see it. I can say, yeah, she's losing interest here. I can see her eyes glaze over. That bit was 10 seconds too long. Yeah. I could have cut that earlier. How can I fuck, I've got to reshoot the whole thing because I could have rescripted that better. Back to the drawing board. And it is about being ruthless with that, because the hardest thing is, and we'll keep it on track with the content creation, when you spend a few hours on an Instagram post or a Facebook, YouTube video, whatever it is, when you spend a few hours on that, of course you're going to like it. Like the other day, this is a while ago, I would say the other day, it was actually like 10 years ago. The other day, I posted up a screenshot of my YouTube video saying, oh, please like and share it around or whatever. Somebody commented back saying, did you like your own video? And I was like, fuck yeah, I did. I made it. Of course I like it. But that's actually part of the issue is we are too close to what we're creating is of course we're going to like it. So what you need to hone as a creator for yourself is either outsource it or get good at objectively saying, I've created it, but it is separate to me. Now what's shit about it?
Yeah.
How can I improve it?
That's like wanting criticism. You know,
Yeah.
You want to be critiqued. And I think that is like a trait that maybe you lent into like quicker than a lot of other people will as well.
Probably. Probably. Like I've always been, from a very young age, had other coaches, I had other mentors, I had other people I want to go to them for guidance. I respect that. Even in business now or content creation now, I know that I can learn something from other people and I'll seek it out.
Man, I remember us having a conversation in over some sushi many, many years ago now. And it was about, like, you were getting some criticism from some more prolific people in the industry at the time. And I remember being kind of like inspired in a way of just watching you explain that to me. And it just didn't look like it rattled you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I still remember it. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. You just took it. And then, like you sort of said, I think you just, you had a way of dealing with it or taking that on board and then just kind of like moving forward from that. And I don't think a lot of people can do that like you did.
For sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate you remembering that. I remember it. It scarred me for life.
All right.
But, there's a couple of ways to look at this kind of thing. When let's say somebody calls you and says, you know what, Ben, that shit you posted about fish oil and sardines, it's fucking wrong. And let's say that you were wrong about it, right? Which is definitely not true. But let's play fairy tale. Let's say that you were wrong.
Let's say we're Paul Saladino.
Yeah, let's say we're Ben Saladino talking about how good sardines are. But let's say you got something wrong and somebody called you out very publicly, very aggressively for it. What are the moves that you have now on the chessboard? What are you going to do next? Are you just going to push back and make yourself even more of an idiot and more of a wrong person? Or are you going to learn from it and save face and improve and be shown to be growing from this and people will respect you? Even the negative detractors would be like, wow, you know what? Big ups to you, big respect is you own that you were wrong or that you didn't know things. You know what? I don't know shit either. I'll be in that situation. They empathize with you.
And it's really big, like, on socials now for coaches to be going, hey, what did I get wrong? We did a podcast literally on this topic. What have we changed our minds on?
Right.
And I think that's great because it just actually goes, like, if you think back to what we were doing in like 2010, 2012 and stuff like that, to now, like, who's not changed like 80% of what they were doing? Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
What are yours, Eugene? But I don't want to hear ones that you've talked about publicly. I want to hear ones that like keep you up at night that you're like, yeah, it's like things that you've changed your mind on or you're thinking about changing your mind on that are really bothering you or maybe slightly embarrassing or that you feel just like, perhaps you don't feel like that at all as your character, but...
Yeah, under that filter, it's hard. Like I can think of like different concepts of like, I used to, dose 30 to 50 grams of fish oil a day. I used to take 100 grams of BCAAs a day. I used to be focused on training in certain positions all the time. Like I'm not embarrassed by them though. I'm like, it's all part of learning, and it's all like that's the best thing that I knew at the time, given my current level of understanding. What I found was, I guess this is a side tangent to that, but kind of related, is what helped clarify things to me is I was in Ireland years ago on tour, and I was in this gym of this absolute genius, like a savant of a dude. Like he's got no social skills, but he's just an absolute genius when it comes to anything the gym related. Training, nutrition, biochemistry, health, everything. I was like, yeah. And he lives at home with his mum. He's like in his 40s or so. You can kind of picture the kind of guy but he's got a great fucking gym. But on his back wall, he had hundreds of certificates plastered all over it. I was like, wow, this is really cool. You've done a lot of continuing ed. He obviously takes his education seriously. And then I noticed there was like, you've got a dozen from this one qualification or this one school, the KATABASIS School of Nutrition or whatever, and you've done the same level half a dozen times, and you've done the other levels as well. But why have you done the same thing over and over and over and over again? And he was like, well, because you're going to take something different every single time. Not because the course changes, but because you change. But because like you can only ever synthesize information up to your level of understanding. Like I've already said so many things right now in this podcast where people are going to be like, yeah, absolutely. But they're going to understand it, but they're not going to really truly connect with it because they're not at that point in their life yet. Yeah. They're not at that stage in their life. So that's fine. So you listen to it again or hear it from 10 other people when the time is right, and then it falls on you. I think there was like some old philosophy quote where it's man or woman, to be politically correct now, or they never step foot into the same river twice because the river's different, and then the man or the woman or they are different because of time has changed. And that's how we should be looking at everything that we do in life is, there was a time where I was all about just racking up qualifications. I've done this, I've done that cert, met this guy, studied from this person. And then I realized, I could do the exact same thing 20 times over and I'll still get something more out of it. And that what's really changed a lot of my perspectives on like, yeah, I'm happy to just be wrong all the time and change shit up and to not have an ego when it comes to being told off, but also when it comes to disseminating information. I'm very particular about, one thing I could say I'm embarrassed about to answer the initial question is years ago, it was very much, this is what to do. This is what I do. This is what you should do. This is the best thing, or this is the best thing that will fix this problem. Whereas now it's like, hey, here is an idea. Here is a concept that I found helpful. It's probably going to be completely shit for you. But hey, sucks to be you. I'm going to tell you about it anyway. Do what you want with it. I want to empower people to sort of make their own decisions and just say, here's a collection of thoughts and ideas. Do what you want. Is it appropriate to you? I don't fucking know. I'm not you. You could decide, you got the big boy pants on, you work it out. And my role is just to put stuff out and try to do no harm, but to put it out in the best way possible where it's not going to be seen as like a you must do or a this is what you should do and this is the authority. This is more just, we're just sharing ideas.
That's what impresses me so much about you. Like Eugene's, like, I don't know about you, Ben, like comparing to other people, but you have a level of humility and almost like a lack of ego about the way you carry yourself and communicate your ideas that is very refreshing.
Right. Thank you.
Man, I got Uncle Eugene to coach me because of this. So 6 months of coaching we did. It was 2016. And like when I was looking for a coach, like, because we were having conversations, we were kind of catching up pretty frequently and stuff like that. And I'd competed in bodybuilding for the last 2 years prior. No coach, and I just wanted to. I wanted to take things to another level, but like there was just gaps in my knowledge with training. Like I wasn't fully rounded as an athlete. We were talking before. Like I came to you when I wanted bigger arms.
I remember. I completely blanked out on there. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a rememberable client, as you can tell. Right? No, I was telling Alex on the way here in the car because I fell off because at that time it was great. We had a really good start.
Yeah, we did.
Who passed away. I had a relationship that broke up, and so. But what I was. The thing that drew me to you was that we were catching up and I was just like, you were so humble but knowledgeable. And when you have like conversations with someone, you walk away and you go, fuck, I would have paid money for that. That little that little interaction, and you just glean a little bit of something extra, And so that's and that's why I chose you, bro.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. I like that of you saying, I should have paid for that interaction. And the funny thing is, like most of the time when you walk away from those interactions, like, I really could have paid for that and would have been great value as well. When you pay those people, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And I think because it's like, those people tend to give you a lot of that. They give, like, one thing I've really pride myself on is giving as much as I can away, much as possible. Yeah. Like I'm not have secrets that you've got to pay for only to get exclusive access. It's like, it's all there. If you can find it, it's all out there.
And when we coached, and I don't know if this was just actually you coached a lot of coaches. This was before you kind of like went, or maybe not before, but like one of the biggest seminar tours you did. That's when we did this stint. If I got the times right. And I think your client list was probably mainly coaches at the time, and obviously I was a coach. But you did give me a lot of autonomy. There was direction without kind of you weren't telling me to do things. It's like, what do you need? Okay, let's explore this.
Yeah.
So I feel like you were like that back then, that's a long time ago already.
It's just me trying to, not get any accountability. Like,
Yeah.
you fucking die, it's your fault.
Sign here.
Sign the waiver.
If you want to do that, sure.
Yeah,
I'll see what happens. I'll take the credit when it goes good. When it goes bad, I didn't tell you to do anything.
Yeah.
That's interesting though, because what we know now to be very popular on social media, you look at some of the people online and absolute thinking, black and white thinking, statements, dichotomous thinking, like we know them to be logical fallacies, that we know them to be not objective, open-minded ways to look at the world because it is nuanced. However, it garners an extreme amount of attention, clickbait, and what flows from that, money as well in people's businesses. The information, the way you talk about it, is nowhere near as sexy, right? Yet you've been able to penetrate and pierce through and gain people's attention and capture them and garner hundreds of thousands of people because of that. I guess, how? In spite of that, how?
It's psychology. And one recommendation I would have for a lot of people, and I say this more to the Australian audiences, which is, most of who would be listening to this, I would imagine. YouTube is not big here. YouTube as a platform, from what I've seen and what I've consumed myself, there are some really big Australian creators, but it's not as much done as it is over in the US. And I am going somewhere with this.
Of course.
In the US, a lot of people have aspirations to be YouTubers. I want to be a YouTuber. They see Mr. Beast, they see their favorite fitness influencers, they see their favorite vloggers, like, oh, these guys are doing so well. I want to be a YouTuber. You get some of that here, but not that much. It's not really the aspiration. And if you did have the aspiration, it would be taken seriously. Whereas over there, it would be like, you want to be a YouTuber? Fuck yeah. There's opportunities. We can do this. You're a hustler. Let's just do this shit. And the reason why I bring this up is I would highly recommend, if somebody wants to get really, really good at spreading their message, having an impact, start a YouTube channel and start really trying your best to put out good content, because it is the most forgiving and unforgiving platform where you'll learn a lot, where you'll put a lot of work in and think, hey, this is a fucking banger video, putting so much content value in here, and it will do fuck all. And it's not because you have no followers. It's not because you don't have any subscribers, because the fact is YouTube is forgiving, where you could be a complete nobody. 1 subscriber, 0 subscribers. And if you put out a fucking banger of a video, it will be seen by millions.
Why is that? I'm
and that's it. So there are a few ways you can go about doing this. Is the easiest way is outrage, anger. Don't do this.
That's right.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
You're an idiot. This is going to kill your gains. Okay, that's easy. And I've done that. I still do that. There's a balance there between how much you should do or how you can communicate it. But 90% of the time, I will avoid doing that. When it's an easy thing, I'm like, oh, I can think on it more and think of a way to spin this where I don't have to go to the negative in terms of trying to create the package of the title, thumbnail, topic I talk about, and the language I use. I can say, it'd be so easy to just say, here's why deadlifts are bad for your back. But I'm like, no. What's the other way to do that? That's not going to be as clickbaity, but is going to communicate the message in my eyes, ethical way and not the easy way. I choose the hard way and it's okay. Now, if I don't have that to fall back on, if I don't have that easy, aggressive, anger-inducing clickbait title or thumbnail, what else do I have? And it's okay, well, now you've got to go down into the depths of what is it that really makes a good production? What is it that makes, if we're talking about content in general, what makes a good video? What is it that makes, if you go watch a reality TV show, if you go watch a movie, go watch John Wick in the cinemas, what is it that makes those movies good? Not the actor Keanu Reeves, not the storyline of John Wick being a badass motherfucker, but what is it about the way that it's been produced, directed, like the actual behind the scenes shit, the color grading, the pacing of it? How has that been manufactured to be a good movie? Because I am sure there are hundreds of thousands of John Wick style movies out there that we've never heard of or that have flopped. What is it that they've done so well and made so well, from the pacing, the color, the direction, the photography behind it, and the story arc, but also I think the big thing is that we can work with is a lot of pacing editing. How have they been able to do that to create the right hooks at the right times, to build tension and then to release it, to create intrigue here, all those things. You can create a very strong clickbait, compelling argument and use intrigue, and you can use excitement, or you can just use negativity and hate, which is easy. Don't do this, this is wrong. Two very different styles. It might be the exact same content you put out, but it's a slightly different way of packaging it and then maybe presenting the arguments as well that can make something do really, really well or really, really poorly. And there are some unifying trends here when it comes to trying to break through the social media thing. It could just be saying, you know what, if you're looking at editing a video from your perspective, you know, Mr. Editor, one thing I look at is I'll watch a pass, like a 1 minute clip and say, okay, if I remove this 1 minute portion from the video, would it have changed, would it have negatively affected somebody's understanding? If I remove this, like a simple one is I say, If I remove those filler words from my statement, would it change the impact of my message? Absolutely not. It'd probably improve it because people can keep up with what I'm saying better having all these ums and ahs and stutters. You can then expand that out to say, okay, that's the ums and ahs and the filler words. What about filler statements? What about me repeating myself twice from two different angles? Could I just have simplified it? Could I cut one out? Could I just say that better? What about the lead-in to me being asked the question or the introduction, the context I give around the solution that I'm about to give you? Could I have removed that and it's still to give them the exact same message and impact? Probably. Get rid of it. Hack away. Like I'll say I've got a 10-minute videos coming out on YouTube or whatever, a 1 minute video that's on Instagram. There was probably an hour of footage that went into building it for me to then cut it down into something so tiny that you only see a small percentage of. But that if I kept the whole 1 hour, it would have flopped. If I made it a 1 minute clip, it gets 10 million views. It's like, well, I know where our time is best spent. And it's based on the psychology of how humans want to be engaged more than just creating outrage.
And how do they want to be engaged?
They like to be put. There's many ways to look at this. So this is not the one way that people like to be engaged because everyone's going to be different. But there are a few trends where we are curious beings. Okay, we like to be stimulated by intrigue. Like, oh, what is the answer? I want to know. They want to feel like they're not being told the answer. They want to feel like they got there on their own. They want to feel like they found the solution out. They want to feel like they're the hero of the story, not that they are just watching you do some really cool shit. Watching you doing some really cool shit, it's kind of cool. Like if it's exceptional, world class, if you're pulling 800 kilograms off the floor, that's pretty fucking cool. But then you actually got to fucking do that, and I can't do that. So how do you make the audience, the watcher, the viewer, the client, how do you make them the hero of the story?
I've got to ask how you do this because you've reminded me of something, but I don't want to throw it off. So I started creative writing about a year ago.
Right.
And I love it. So it was something that I got inspired to, I'm a big like Dungeons and Dragons kid, freak from back in the day.
Wow,
and look, I hadn't done anything like that in many, many years. But I got inspired again and I just started doing creative writing in the morning and I sucked at it. I used to have so much more skill at than what I think I have now. But one of the things I did was I went to YouTube and I just absorbed a whole, like you can learn anything from there, like
absolutely
with these little courses on creative writing. And what you'll hear them say all the time is show, don't tell.
Yes.
Show, don't tell. And I kept, I still struggle with that concept in creative writing. And that's kind of similar to what you're saying there about giving them this journey whereby you're not just giving them the answers.
For sure.
So how do you get that?
Well,
how do you produce that?
I'm glad you actually forgot about that as a concept, but show, don't tell, or show then tell as well is a really important storytelling tactic. Where if you think about, okay, what's a concept that I could talk about? Let's say like a back machine. Why this machine is so good for your back. I can sit here for 5 minutes straight, talk to you about moment arms, physics, length-tension relationship. This is why this machine is so good. And here it is. Or I can show it to you. And immediately, that's quirky. What's going on? I want to know, why is this machine so good? Why do you like this? What's happening? I've shown you something, and then I can, if I choose to, I can tell you about all the different nerdy things. But I've got you hooked, and I've created the intrigue, and that's kind of what it is. Like same kind of thing where it's show then tell or show don't tell, but it's always show. Give that people something more to be engaged by than just your talking head and concepts. Give them something they can tangibly, immediately understand, or that enhances the message even further. That adds color to the words that you say. It's not just putting BRoll on top of your talking head for the sake of having BRoll on there. That BRoll should amplify the message further. Where you see a lot of people now doing these Hormozy style reels and whatnot, where they're just throwing emojis in, they're throwing all these scenes, and it's not good. It's not serving the purpose. When Hormozy does it, because he's got a great editing behind it, it serves its purpose really, really well. But when you see all the copies of it, people trying to emulate that, a lot of, not all, but a lot of them do miss the mark, because they say, oh, it's all about putting flashy graphics on, a lot of jump cuts, a lot of moving text. That's what's going to get people engaged. No, it's fucking not. You got to do those things if they're going to elevate the experience. And a lot of the time they don't. So people just end up showing you a whole bunch of random shit that doesn't help. So I think it kind of answers the question maybe. But yeah, I look at it from a show and tell. It's something that I didn't do for the longest time. It was all tell, and then show.
Yeah.
Tell you all the concepts, back up my knowledge, how smart I am.
Yeah.
I'll show you the answer here.
Yeah.
Like even 2 years ago, look at my YouTube videos back then. I do 10 minutes of talking and then I show the exercise. And I learned pretty quick. People were like, bro, get to the fucking point.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to, but I want you to learn as well. And then I realized, hey, me just fighting back is not helping them. I should take their advice on board and say, this is how people want to be engaged with. How can I communicate my message better? And it's show, then tell, or show and tell at the same time, or a hybrid of that.
It's like, so back in the day when I had the GNC supplement shops and things like that, and we knew nothing about sales back then, right? Like we got taught sales and got taught how to do sales training, but honestly, we had no idea. But it was all features and benefits.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, you know, like the quickest way to make someone's eyes glaze over when you're like talking about ginkgo biloba? Start talking
Say
about
ginkgo biloba.
Yes, just say it. But start talking about the features of ginkgo biloba.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we've come a long way from since then.
Yes,
How would you sell ginkgo biloba?
Sell me this pen.
Yeah, but like,
Sell me ginkgo
I think
biloba.
it's a useful exercise for people to think about. It's any stuff like, how would you sell protein to somebody? How would you sell creatine? Would you say, oh, the benefits of creatine is going to help with the methylation cycle, it's going to help with your fuel for energy production, it's going to help in your brain, it's going to help with X, Y, Z. You could say that, and that's kind of showing or kind of telling. Or you could just say, what problems do you have?
Yeah, pain points.
Like find the pain points, or even like paint them a scenario of like, how does it actually fit in, and show them something beneficial. And that's what people, we get caught up because we understand the knowledge. We think knowledge is what's going to get people over the line, but it's not. You think about, why do you take the things that you take, or why do you do things that you do? It's not because you were told about it, or it's because you actually were shown in some way tangible benefits or tangible theoretical benefits. And you're like, I buy into that.
You listening to you speak about all these topics, one thing is clear, Eugene, is that you are a very clear and proficient communicator. And it sounds like something you've worked at. A lot of people aren't.
Yes.
In fact, when I first started watching your videos, I'm like, man, is this guy reading off something? This guy's reading off like a TV right next to him. I swear it sounded like you were reading off a script, right? Because of how measured and every word was like precisely picked, you know? And Jordan Peterson says, be very precise with your language, right? And perhaps you've taken inspiration from that, I don't know. But I wonder how you learnt to be such a proficient, clear communicator.
To go back to our one of the early points from this discussion, it was reps. I look back at some of my earliest recordings from seminars, and it was a bad fucking time. It was boring. It was dry, and it was a lot. I was like, this is not good. People are falling asleep in the seminars. Even when I was going on some of my world tours, when I was, making a lot of money from this stuff, from speaking events, I was like, fuck, people are still falling asleep.
You
People
actually
are
noticed
still
that? Like
disengaging.
eye glazing over?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those ones. So it's,
Oh man, those will get you.
I know the feeling.
yeah. And like, I've been in that seat myself. as a student. So I know what it's like. And I was like, okay, how can I improve this? And again, same thing of like, okay, I've accumulated a lot of reps, but what have I learned from each single rep? What can I refine? What can I replace? And that's a big reason why I film everything I do now. And I wish I filmed even more when I was younger. Like when I've filmed pretty much every single event I've ever run since about 2015, which is hundreds of events, each event being about 16 hours. And that's a lot of content that I don't do anything with apart from when I filmed it, I'd watch back over it the next day. I'd watch back over it in transit and be like, I could have cut that. I could have changed that. I could have fixed that. That was this person put me on spot, asked me a question. I didn't know the answer and I waffled on and I shouldn't have. I could have done this differently.
That content, so from back then though, am I right that would be mainly for coaches? Whereas now I feel like your content is like far more than like, your reach is well beyond just coaches, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a different, like, I have been to your seminars and like there are some technical aspects to what you would be teaching that I don't think you used overly technical jargon when explaining. But I can see I do feel like it's vastly different from what I see in your current platform. But there's a different reach that you're going for, right?
Not necessarily. Like I still want to appeal to coaches, but for different reasons. And I do appeal to them for different reasons. I appeal to them more so for the simplicity and effectiveness. Because I think, as you would have seen in the industry, there's a big pendulum swing where we go too simple, we go too complex. And I think the last 5 years has been too complex, too much shit.
You just
as
answered
a
my next
pushback.
question. I was like, where are we now?
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that I had on the list to ask you today was just, you're very much obviously in a group of educators that deliver fantastically with training, with exercise selection, with execution and all those kind of things. And on the sidelines, we're watching like a lot of the to and fro on various elements. And I'm like, I want to know where you think we are right now, because I think that, and again, it's hard to tell because the controversy is what gets clicks as well. So it's like, how much of this is just complete nonsense, for the sake of like attention, right?
Absolutely.
But you feel like we've come out of a very complicated.
Yeah, I don't think I think we're still in that complicated, and that's part of why like a lot of my messaging now gets received so incredibly well. To pat myself on the back, it's because people at some point they don't crave me, but they crave a little bit of a simpler approach. Not because simpler is worse or because simpler means less. It just means simpler means it's been communicated effectively, and there is wiggle room for them to be the hero, for them to say, okay, here are the ideas of joint torque and joint forces and moment arms. Should I do this or not? I don't know. I can make a decision myself now. Yeah. Should I put the cable height at this level, head height or shoulder height? It's fucking 3 inches. Who gives a fuck? Just play with it and see what happens. People kind of want that because there was a little bit too much of the nuance side, where it doesn't mean the nuance stuff is bad. But I think with the popularization of a lot of these concepts and techniques through TikTok, and that was just a complete thing out of left field, it just completely changed the game for the health and fitness space because of the popularity of certain trends and things to talk about. And it became too much complication for people. Like, for example, one thing, a YouTube video that I'm working on right now is going into the different layers of complexity of muscle building, which is a very simple thing. Like, how deep do we need to go into the layers of how to program and periodize effectively, pick the right exercise for muscle building? And a lot of what gets talked about nowadays, and it gets a lot of the clicks, it is that final little layer. It is in the last 3 to 5 layers of complexity in maybe a 20-step thing of complexity. So people are hyper-focusing on that because it's kind of sexy, but then they're losing out on so much of the basic fundamental stuff. But it's also getting confused by the complexity because they don't understand. Like, we all know that if you ride a bike, like not gear, cycle, but if you're going cycling on a bike just home to work or whatever, you're going to build some muscle, right? Maybe if you're a beginner. But you're not going to build anywhere near as much muscle as if you were doing a barbell back squat with a adequate load for around 8 to 30 reps. We know that, even without knowing the science or knowing the why. But why? You put a lot of coaches on the spot with that question, they'll be like, oh fuck, they know that you're not going to build muscle. Like, if I come to you and say, I want to be your client, get me jacked, you're not going to make me run, you're not going to put me on a bike. They will be the last two things you do. They're not bad, they're not wrong, but they're not going to be what you choose. So why do you choose the barbell squat? Or why do you choose the leg press? Or why do you choose the leg curl? I would choose those things every single time. But why? And if people can't articulate that basic answer as to what makes that exercise on the tier for hypertrophy in that context better or worse than riding a bike or going for a walk, even though those things can build muscle and do build muscle in some people, if you can't answer that on a fundamental level, it's like, why the fuck are you worrying about your iliac lat? And I care about the iliac lat. I do. I love it. I care about that shit because it matters at my point, at my level. But a lot of people who are caring about it is like, you're not at that point just yet. And you can care about it still for sure. Absolutely. Knock yourself out. I think it's still cool. I think a lot of the work that's being put out there, it's incredible. And it's pioneering a lot of new levels. But people have lost the understanding on what should be covered first.
Yeah. It's like, we were talking about this the other day. Alex and I train at Muscle City sometimes. And I walked in there and I looked around and I just thought, man, people are training so much smarter here than if I walked into a similar style gym than 10 years ago.
Right.
I do across the board. I
sure.
recognize it. I think
Absolutely.
if I look here and I can see the work of, them getting the content from educators across whatever platforms and across the board, people were training smarter.
Absolutely.
But were people training harder? I was just like, don't know it. Were people reaching for their phones and like everything's getting videoed? And I'm like, yep, cool. Am I against videoing? No. What are the reasons behind the videoing though? And then it's like when you see someone like taking the video and then like not even pushing themselves, with an intensity, but they're doing very smart training. It's like,
sure.
Great. Everything's technically speaking, you could put on a workshop. But it's just one of those things where I'm just like, are we going to look back on this right now and go like, who's not pushing themselves? Because you have so many machines. Look around us here. We're in heaven right here with machines. But it's kind of like that, endless choices that we have, looking at all of the nuances, like you said, perhaps before just like learning some fundamental grunt and like, an ability to just go in. And I think one of the things that is easy to develop is when you have less, you have to like go harder.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. Like one counter I would say to that is like the people who are training smart but not hard, I wouldn't consider that smart.
Yeah.
Because they've rearranged their priorities. Yeah. And that's a bastardization and a complete misunderstanding on what a lot of educators are trying to do, is saying, hey, here is this really nerdy level of technical detail. It's going to work, but make sure you cover the first 10 layers.
Yeah.
And they coach it to be for all 10, 11 layers, but it doesn't get applied in that way. And that's where it's like, you just forgot everything else. You're not meant to toss everything else out and just do this one thing. You're meant to do all the other 10 things you're doing in the first place. Yeah. But people, it's the grass is always greener, the shiny new object syndrome, where you've just got to keep going to the next thing and just forget because you haven't applied enough stuff.
Yeah. Like people, like smart technically is probably a better way to explain it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure. They can explain it to you, but then they don't execute it.
Yes. And I feel like it goes in line with just like, the industry as a whole. Every coach knows now, like just the expectations, of like timeframes for people to get success and results. And, you're trying to like put into perspective, like just like, if you want this life, if you want this, result, like step back here. Like, why are you rushing this? You
for sure.
What I mean? And so trying to like deal with all that at once rather than realizing like you have to have a mindset to be able to go in here, push hard day in, day out, without worrying about like what's going on the gram and stuff like that, or like putting it out there and, so it's just it's an interesting time. I feel like the same, that's what I see in your content is like, I can see you're very much pushing that simplicity in the way that you're articulating it. But yeah, it's interesting.
I think an important part of messaging is like, just because you know something doesn't mean you need to tell people about it.
Yeah.
Or just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It's more, again, I'm a big fan, more recently, I guess, as I've matured in my creation process, in showing restraint in what I share, what I talk about, what I do. Because what is necessary right now? And there will be times where I'll be like, you know what, let's get fucking nerdy. Let's just go fucking 20 layers deep on this shit. But when is it appropriate?
How do you think about that? Because I'll listen to a very natural curiosity within me. It's like, does it interest me? Like, do I have this natural passion and curiosity towards it? Because then with that type, it'll allow me to deliver it in a way that's extremely authentic and just very naturally, passionate. But then how do you choose?
Ask yourself, what's the opportunity cost? Like, look at it economically.
So it's quite strategic to you.
Yeah, like I'll say, what is the opportunity cost of me going to these extra layers of detail in my explanations to people or trying to put this message out there? Is it actually having a net positive on the people, or is it conflating my ego more? Is this message being spread for their benefit or for my benefit or for some other benefit that's separate to all of us? I don't know. And those are the kind of questions I ask myself. And a lot of the time it comes back to saying, yeah, this could be done a lot more simpler. Not because simple is always better. Like, we should just try to simplify as much as we can, but also it's like, well, yeah, what is the cost to this? Is it creating confusion? If I was to put out a lot of, some very complex, nerdy messages, whether it's on biochemistry or it's on nutrition or it's on training or whatever, it's like, is that actually going to have a net positive on the industry by doing so? Or is it going to create a lot more questions, arguments, and I don't want to say negativity because it's not necessarily negative, but just confusion, where it's actually not going to help people. And if that's the case, then it might not be worth talking to that level of nuance and detail all the time and saving it for more of a private consult. If you come to say, hey, I need you to help me work out this injury or work out this lagging body part or this gut thing or whatever, then we can talk about that in private. But it's not best done on social media. There's a time and place.
It's interesting. I'm observing my own friction to hearing that, because I definitely do like talking about nuanced, complex subjects on social media.
It's fun. But the question you got to ask yourself is who's benefiting from it? And a lot of the time you'll find in those cases, it's probably you.
Absolutely.
And it's like, it's got to be about the other person. Make them the hero. Or make the wider industry, collective whole, better by uplifting, saying the standard should be, we should all be talking about the benefits of creatine on a neurological level.
This comes back to a really basic concept that I come back to quite often, which is talking about nutrition for a sec and talking about meal plans versus macro goals and stuff like that. And so if you're a coach or someone explaining nutrition and you do it very well in terms of energy expenditure and macronutrients and calories, and then you leave a general population person with that, with no kind of assistance on how to put that into practice, you're going to find people end up in different areas with that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They engage with it differently. They have a different level of pickup on that skill, for instance. And this is what people say to me, what's your philosophy on nutrition or meal plans or this whole conversation? I say, look, genuinely what I'm looking for is your feasibility assessment with the client. It's well,
for sure,
what do you need from me with nutrition for us to hit these goals? Would you like me to put together some form of meal suggestions so that you've got a point of departure?
Absolutely.
It's literally a point of departure. It's not this is what you do. It's not tell.
For sure.
But it's guiding them to then go, oh, okay, so that's what a 500 calorie meal looks like.
Yeah.
That's what this looks like.
Absolutely.
Because I want you to own this. And how we get there, I can either just put all the onus on you, or we can distill some of that theory into some practical interventions, right? And that's one of the most basic things that I think people, coaches or educators can take a side on, a black and white. This is how you do it. It's the best way. And I'm just hold on a sec. That tells me you don't have a lot of experience with people that,
yes,
or you've let clients go because it doesn't fit your system.
Yes.
Yeah. We were talking about in the car on the way here. So we do a lot of blood work, and we were talking about some of these amazing AI algorithm sort of stuff that's looking at the interpretation of blood. Wow, they're doing a really good job, right?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But a lot of these reports, what they spit out, I think there's only so much usefulness in them so far, although you could use GPT to take it further, right? In that, if you had an iron deficiency or a B12 deficiency, they tend to give you food groups as such. It's really generic, and it's not sort of helping you if you're in a calorie controlled plan, for instance, well, what are some good options, as that would fit into the framework that you're dealing with. So it's just practical insights here, this type of food would suit, but that wouldn't for these reasons.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, again, it's just kind of bringing it all together.
What are you using? Because I thought when you first said AI, I thought, using putting GPT.
I actually don't want to say what it is.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
No,
proprietary.
No, it's not proprietary. Just yeah.
I assumed it was just like a GPT saying, hey, here's my output from the last 12 blood tests I've had. What's the trend? What's the pattern? What's going on? And they can synthesize
We'll
that.
tell you off camera, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of these reporting tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And they're good. Like I've used them and you know that you compare them to what you're looking at from like your own analysis and stuff like that, and they're really good. But yeah, like there's like some of the practical interventions that aren't just within the reports.
And that makes sense because it's still, again, I don't know what the platform you use is, but it's in its infancy. And it can't be at a point where it will be able to say, okay, based on you and your personal preferences, your chemistry, and what you have available in your landscape around here in Melbourne, what's going to be the best seasonal produce to give you more molybdenum or whatever. We need more molybdenum in our life.
That's the thing about you, Eugene. People don't know that you actually really understand, at least from what Ben's told me, like nutrition science and biochemistry and blood work. You don't really talk about those things from my observation at all.
I stay out of it.
Yeah.
Especially in the public sphere. I stay out of it because, like, you know what?
I'm sure I've seen an old video of glycolysis or something. I've seen something back in the day.
I used to lecture about it a lot, but like, you know what? I would just rather not do. What's the opportunity cost? What do I have to gain from talking about this stuff? I could talk about, pyruvate or glycolysis or energy systems and on the nutritional side on deficiencies and going through an oat test with you and working that out or your Dutch test. But like, who's going to benefit from that? I would and my ego would. Look at me, I'm a fucking genius. I know biochemistry. I studied this from this person or whatever. But does the message I put out is actually having a net positive? Actually wouldn't be. I don't see it.
Depends who you want to talk to, right?
Depends who I want to talk to.
Like, you're not really talking to the people with perhaps more debilitating health conditions that require those tests?
Correct. Like, if I was working in a one-on-one client setting, they'd come through with a certain very specific issue and I was taking care of them, which I don't do, so that's why it's kind of a moot point for me. But if I was in that scenario, then it's necessary talking about the kind of stuff. But to the masses, to what I want to elevate within the community in the fitness space, to my overall brand and messaging, talking about any of that stuff makes zero sense apart from stroking my ego, and I don't care about that.
Because you know your audience. You know your audience, your intent, and the level of impact you're trying to make.
Yes.
And that's not
It's not
going to get you there.
It's not there. It'd be a quick win. It'd be like a quick flex, but it wouldn't actually have any payoff apart from, like, so why bother talking about it?
There's a great degree of self-awareness then you have towards that then.
That's, it's what you got to have. You got to just have, not even self-awareness, you got to have an awareness on what, I guess it is self-awareness of what you want to do. What is your mission? What is the KATABASIS community? What is the end goal? What do you want from that? Because that is now your decision filter. Everything that you decide to put out or not put out or do, create, business opportunities, is it going to get you towards that end goal of death?
In the arena. I don't think, do you have an end goal? I don't know if you have one.
Yeah.
Do you consider that community that you talk about, the Gambaroo app community, or the Instagram, social media, YouTube community at large?
I talk about the whole world.
Yeah.
The fitness space. Yeah.
Okay.
Gambaroo is my vehicle to impact that fitness space.
Yeah.
Instagram is my ability to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask because I feel like of recent, like I've seen like a lot of the discussion revolve around the training side of things, right? I can't remember how much of it's revolved around the nutrition. So I was like, what message do you think your audience needs more of? From you, like what's next?
Surprisingly, it's not even training. It's the real message that I would love people to get more of long term is autonomy and collaboration. They're the two things that we need more of as humans and within the fitness space, to keep it less meta than, as human beings to save the human race. But we need autonomy, self-sufficiency, which is the same kind of thing, and the collaboration. And the reason why I'm so big on those two things is because that is, if you look at the fitness space specifically, it's all, you are on this camp or that camp. This person's right, this person refuted you, whose side are you going to be on this debate? It's, you got to buy this program, you got to buy that program, you got to buy that supplement, you got to go through this person's coaching, you got to go through that. It's all very much camps and egos and personalities, when at the end of the day, they can and should all work together in integrated practice. Not that we're all going to have one big hub that we all work for, but for the consumer, for the general public, for the actual client, they shouldn't come across your work as KATABASIS and my work as Gambaru and see us as competitors. They should never see that. They should just see it as, oh, we're all working together on the same kinds of things. There's no competitive thing here. We all work together and it's a collaborative effort. And they're all going to help me in slightly different ways to gain autonomy over myself to make my own decisions. So I'm not going to follow some random coach blindly. Like we're in the incredible space now in the industry and in the world where we have so much information, where even 10 years ago when like you and I were bodybuilding a lot more, it was just get a coach and follow them. Internet wasn't what it is now. You know, the information wasn't what it is now in terms of availability. And now we're in a place where we have incredible amounts of information, but we have less autonomy. Because now we've given up that autonomy not to the one coach guru, but we've given it up to so much information that now crippling us.
Yes.
It's like, fuck, do I put the cable 10 degrees higher or lower? Holy shit, I'm going to kill my elbows by not doing this right.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bench press now, say goodbye to my pecs. It's scary.
And people are second guessing themselves a lot. They're overwhelmed.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like I see this so often. It's like, and then I'm having to teach. All right, let's go back to
how many reps did we do in our last session together on some of those exercises? We hit like 15 reps, man. Apparently, like 7 of those were completely unnecessary.
ineffective.
Ineffective.
It's
You know what
cardio
I mean?
causing central fatigue, and you're now going to interfere with your ability to put acetylcholine across the synapse there to recruit your motor units. You're fucked.
Some of these clickbait like ideas, you know what I mean? Like that, we've got some evidence that we're operating off on to get to that, but I'm just like, you are confusing so many people by getting that attention.
And that's what I look at.
And now you're going to have like people with bad wrists trying to do 6 rep bicep curls only forever. You know, like with no kind of understanding of like there's a context to you know, to everything like that.
And that's it. So I mean, when it comes to like my messaging now, I say I use training as the vehicle to then slip in the message of take care of yourself, learn the basic principles, collaborate with others, learn from as many people as you can, and make your own decisions and think critically. Now, I could insert the same message underlying as a theme into nutrition content or biochemistry or whatever, but that's just not what I enjoy as much. So I choose to do training. Training's a bit easier for me.
And I think you're right.
personally.
Like you mentioned before, training does make the perfect analogy for a lot of things.
Yes, we all understand it. Even like, you know, it's something that we've all lived from. Well, I wouldn't say it because a lot of audience may have started training later, but we've all got a good amount of experience in. Where nutrition, you can go several years training and not know shit about nutrition and still get exceptional results or bad results, because a lot of it can be very contextual there. And a lot of it's like, it's nurture based from your upbringing. Had the right parents, had the right upbringing. You know how to eat well just autonomously without having to think about it. Somebody else needs to think a lot more about it. But training is one of the unifiers. Yeah.
critical thinking. You said.
Yes.
Do you think that's hey?
I think I do that. Yeah.
Do you think that's the underlying principle, method that people need to learn more of to become less overwhelmed with all of the information that's coming through the fire hose, or would you direct them somewhere else?
It's definitely a big part of it. I'm trying to think what else would be important there.
Like our very first episode was literally on critical thinking, right? And it was because, well, from my perspective anyway, I just felt like I wanted to arm people with some of the tools to understand some of the communication and language that was being used by people like trying to grab your attention, your
manipulate
money, manipulation.
Yeah.
Because there's so much manipulation out there, you know, from people who you would hope, you know, would be a little bit more, you know, authentic about what they're doing. That we were just like, look, these are the kind of people that you probably want to just take a real good look at before you go ahead and, you know, listen to what they're saying. You know, and we joked about, like, I think on that episode we were talking about like carnivores, and we were talking about, you know, just people like that. Because it comes back to that black and white nature of the clickbaits and the, you know, the click-throughs and stuff like that. It's so easy to get people's attention from something. It's like, you don't need to be listening to that. You know what I mean? It's the nuance that's well later.
I don't think the problem is I don't think people know. Like their filter is open to everything, and it's like they're absorbing it all, and they don't even know they don't need to listen to it because they're asking. Like they're not even asking. It's like they're listening to it all, and they don't know what to pick. It's like there's a rainbow of ice creams, and they're tasting them all. Okay, and they're overwhelmed. And this is a humongous consistency that I see. And that podcast we did is a big remedy for that. But you, Eugene, what if you could give that message to everybody in the world who's on social media to calm down and be able to rationally, objectively pick and decipher which information should be assimilated or pushed away, how would you begin to teach that?
Fuck, it's a very, very difficult thing to answer because unfortunately, we're always going to be, just as humans, we're always going to fall prey to following the wrong people or the wrong advice. It is, even you look at a guy like, who's reputable? You look at a guy like Huberman, okay? You could very easily say he's a very reputable person because he's very scientific. He puts out a lot of mechanisms. He puts out a lot of how this stuff works in the body and why it works the way that it does. But then you'll see a lot of the arguments he makes about things like cold immersion or some of his sedentary lifestyle. They go, hang on, the evidence you're providing is actually not good evidence. Doesn't mean you're completely wrong. It just means a portion of what you're saying is incredible. A portion of what you're saying is just downright misleading.
Yep.
He's not trying to misinform people or do anything. He's got best intentions. I'm always going to support that. But it makes things really difficult because what it really means is to be able to really take care of yourself and have some kind of level of autonomy, you need to also accept the fact that you're never going to be completely autonomous, that you're always going to be able to fall prey to being misled down the wrong path. But we should also have the self-critical lens on to try to bring things back to first principles of how does this stuff work in the body. Huberman is saying that this cold immersion is going to do this to my body. Eugene says this intervention is going to give me elbow cancer and blow up my triceps. How does this actually work in the body on the basic principles that we are adaptive, economical, efficient organisms? Does it make sense on that perspective? Okay, let's go a little bit of a layer deeper. What mechanisms is he talking about? Heat shock proteins, cold shock proteins. He's talking about, fucking mitosis or some other crazy bullshit. Does this actually hold up? And then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're like, you know what? He's using words, he's using concepts I don't fucking understand because he's done a fucking PhD in neurology and I haven't. So if you want to understand that shit, you've got to either do the PhD yourself or trust in that person. And when you place that trust in that person, that's a lot to put into an authority figure. So that's where you've got to come back and say, okay, I trust you for now, but I'm open to be skeptical. A healthy amount of skepticism, healthy amount to not ever take everything you say, everything that I say as gospel, because I'm going to be wrong because I don't know any better. But I'm giving the best information I do know right now. It's a very hard question to answer, say, here's the one thing you need to do, because we are always going to fuck things up. And that's part of being human. And that's part of why I believe nobody should have big egos in what they're doing and the messages they're spreading. And that's one of the biggest filters you can pick out is if somebody's giving you clear directives on something, they're probably full of shit, whether they know it or not.
Okay.
And like this goes back to what we were saying before about the almost the antidote to that situation is like the current theme of like, Sherelle does this really well is I wish I'd been told this 5 years ago when I first started training, or like what we've changed our minds on and stuff like that. So I love it that yourself, I see Luke Tulloch doing it, I see Sherelle doing it. All of those are basically saying, hey, I'm an educator in the space, I talk about things, but my understanding or our interpretation of what we know has changed since then. And so here I am saying this is what I think now.
For sure. There's an important piece to that is I can put out a post like that and it can just be virtue signaling of like, oh, I've learned so much in the past 5 years. Everything I know must be right now. The caveat to I think gets missed on a lot of those kinds of posts is people should say, hey, I've changed my mind on these 10 training things or 10 nutrition things in the past 10 years. So I've learned a lot more. And you know what that actually means? Not that I've learned so much more now, but it means that every single thing I'm telling you right now could be completely false.
That's right.
And you should take that for what it is. Yeah. That no matter what I tell you now, the complete opposite could be true in a year's time, and I will very happily change my tune to that because I care about finding the best approximation of the truth given the current level body of knowledge that we have right now, not having the right answer or being right all the time. Yeah. And they're two very different things.
So there's an acceptance that what we know currently may be inaccurate, and it probably is inaccurate to an extent. There's an acceptance of that. But then I know some people listening to that will be like, they'll put their hands up and feel despair of like, well, I don't know, I'm going to do nothing then. And they just like do nothing and they stay still.
For sure.
And
sounds like a them problem. Sounds like a you problem. If you're watching this, sounds like a you problem.
So like I feel that for them. So how I contend with that, and perhaps you boys do as well, is I just look at the direction of the evidence. You know, not putting stock in
sure.
any one person.
Absolutely.
It's like, if it's like a seesaw, okay, if a person says to live a certain way or do a certain thing, like cold exposure is really bad for you, for example, but the direction of evidence is actually the other way of like, what are other people, other colleagues, other people, and you take the average of a particular sector of people and you see where it points relative to what the claim is being made, and it gives you a perspective of, oh, I need a lot of skepticism towards that outlier. Perhaps they may be right and they're ahead of the game, or perhaps they're just trying to get attention and misinterpreting information.
For sure. It's a fucking Wild West out there, you know.
One of my favorite things, and this
Wild
is,
West.
this is like an old dog thing to say, is just like anytime something comes up like this and it's a trend, I'm just like, give it 5 years. Do you know what I mean? Because everything's cyclical, and I'm just like, I'm patient.
Yeah.
I'm a patient person. Like, I don't care. Like you see people get on their high horse or on their soapbox and they talk about this, and you're like, I wonder if they're still thinking that in 5 years. I'll just give them some time. And then what's really funny is that time passes, and you're like, oh, okay, there you go.
Oh, he's eating fruit now.
He's eating fruit now. That's
Oh.
exactly right. You know, and this is it.
I do find it funny, like cold exposure to one thing. Again, this is still very new stuff where a lot of really good people are backing it. Not just Huberman, so I don't want to bash him or anything like that. I don't even want to bash anybody about that. But cold exposure, it's a big thing now. You remember when Rhonda Patrick was banging on about it?
Yeah.
Like nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it disappeared.
Yeah.
And then it's the exact same, there is some new research now, but there's pretty much the exact same studies she was pulling out back then. I've come back to the forefront. They're the ones people are quoting, like, well, hang on, nothing's changed. Let's get trendy again.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
This happens.
It's crazy.
But I think to your point, like what you were sort of like alluding to before is like just being able to take that 30,000 foot view and like look back at the direction of the evidence, right? And that just comes back to like success leaves clues.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do we like look at things now and we go, oh, kind of bodybuilders were doing this kind of right, you know? When we were looking at the evidence like really critically in these randomized controlled trials that would come out on certain outcomes with training, we go, oh, bodybuilders doing this wrong. And then you give it a couple more years and you go, actually, it turns out that it's like, no shit, motherfuckers. Like, look at the size of these guys as a general rule across the board. They've got to be doing a lot of it right.
Yeah, maybe high carb, low fat works, in a lot of an extent to grow muscle. I used to really push back against it, but I was, just a former version of myself that was more, not as good, more chimp-like.
May the Fruit Loop King.
Yes, I'm looking for a sponsorship. Just saying that triggers a lot of people. So I'll keep pushing against that. Principles, training. You've been in the game a while, Eugene. Mm-hmm. You've been associated and worked with a lot of incredible professionals. If you were to synthesize perhaps 3 to 6 principles from complex to simple of strength and conditioning and training that you could put in a small pocketbook, right, and gift out to everybody who starts training, what would be those themes and principles in that 3 to 6 chapters?
If I could be even less than that, it'd be one chapter.
Oh, I love it.
The body is economical and efficient. That's it. Everything you can think of, how many exercises you should do, what rep range should you do CrossFit, should you eat more carbohydrates? It comes down to the fact that the body is economical and efficient, and it's adaptive. This is like the whole general adaptation syndrome, the stress response. It all comes back to the fact that we are economical and efficient, and you need to be strategic about how you set up your training because of that. And you can try to nerd out about it and find the optimal minimum effective volume, maximum recoverable volume, and all those kinds of concepts. You can try to nerd out about that, and that's going to work, a lot of the time. Or you can just fuck around and find out and just see what works for you. And just, I'm going to do 30 sets and see what happens. It did fucking nothing. Cool. Write that down. I'm going to do 40 sets. It did even more nothing. It did a negative effect. Cool. I know, because no matter how much we ever know about the human body from literature, from science, from scientific papers and studies being done, one thing people forget is that in a lot of these scientific studies, say we're trying to test out the effects of a certain rep protocol on muscle gain for your biceps. You get subjects, you put them through a certain drug protocol, training protocol, nutrition protocol, and you see the answers, this protocol created more gains. We have that bell curve, that standard deviation of who actually gets results, who didn't. The average falls in the middle. Some people get exceptional results. Some people get shit results. And you've got no fucking way of knowing where you fall in that bell curve. No matter how good the studies, no matter how good the evidence, the body of all the evidence is, you could be that one outlier who gets negative results from taking steroids and who loses muscle. I mean, it sucks to be you. What are you going to do? You can't even drug yourself bigger. But hey, those kinds of things do happen, and so that's where we can use all the evidence available to us and all these different nerdy things and principles that get discussed. And I love talking about. I'm always going to love talking about those kinds of things. But we always need to be able to filter it back to say, okay, I just need to just fuck around and find it for myself. And these things are guides, but they're not going to be ever a directive of saying this is what we need to do. 10 sets is the answer. 30 sets is the answer. This drug is the answer. It can't be.
So if we go back a few years, right? What was the workshop that you used to do that was in Williamstown? You did it here.
Yeah,
2017, 2018.
It's been the same name, Muscle Mechanics.
Muscle Mechanics, that's right.
But it's just been different every time.
Yeah.
Don't tell her that.
I'm too lazy to change the name to be something. I like the name. It comes off. I can talk whatever I want. Yeah, it's fine.
Look, it was a great workshop. And to my understanding, like back then, not just exercise execution or selection or programming, but that had a lot to do with drills, like mobility, stability, like that kind of thing. Where do you sit on that now? You know what I mean?
It's appropriate for some, inappropriate for others, and it's a waste of time for some people.
And how does someone make sense of appropriateness for them, do you think?
Yeah, I try to do the minimum. Try to do the least amount of anything.
Yes.
Try to find the minimum that you can do and get away with not having to do anything. I look at it and say, I take a lazy approach. I say, how can we get rid of as much as possible from your interventions and still get you moving forwards? And then how can we add in more things that have any benefit? Yes, no, maybe, and go from there. So everything I was talking about in the past, I've taught, like some of it, I'm just like, yeah, that was fucking wrong. That was dumb. I shouldn't have said that. But a lot of it is like, it's completely valid. But I'm still trying to find ways to remove it from people's toolkit, where they don't need to rely on it, they don't need to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I saw you post something which it might have been a while ago now though, but like in terms of doing some of these drills as like an within the active rest of like, the first one or two exercises.
Yeah.
So like a time efficient thing. And
For sure.
I've explained this to Alex because Alex and I have done some training sessions together where he gets to the gym and I get to the gym. And 30 minutes later, you know what I mean? Like he used to come back from his drills, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
sure.
I'd be like at my top end sets of my deadlifts and he's like, what did you do? And I'm like, I did 60 kilos on the bar.
Yeah. Like that's a good example.
But in saying that, like I would often use the rest periods in those primary exercises to be going away and doing a bit of something like, feeling something in the shoulder, something in the hip, like I'm going to go away and do that.
Yeah.
So it's pick and choose, and it's very much based on a time efficiency as well. But I put in the work like he did as well. Do you know what I mean? And I attended workshops like yours too. Took heaps away from that. So I was just wondering, like, where you sat on it now, because I do feel like that's a harder thing for someone to tease out the appropriateness of that huge selection of things that they could be doing.
Yeah. So I say, again, this comes down to when I teach things or in general when we learn things, I try to say. Try to communicate the message that these are the concepts and they're going to be beneficial for some, negative for others, and inappropriate or waste of time for others. And the only way you're going to find it out for yourself is you've got to go in the deep end.
You got to fuck around.
You got to fuck around and find out. So I tell people like, hey, like let's take the deadlift example. We could say, hey, let's do this glute activation between sets. Or we can do glute activations before your deadlifts. Get a big old booty pump or a core activation drill and then go do deadlifts. And you'll probably feel good by doing that. Okay, that's layer one. You're adding in more shit. Layer two might be doing what you do. Let's do the exact same drills. Let's do them as rest periods. I feel good by doing that. Layer three, I'm just going to get rid of them and just deadlift. That feels pretty fucking good too. And it might not have had to just go on and cold and done it from day one. But there's, a journey you have to go through. But I always try to tell people, like, try to make the goal for yourself to do the least amount of work possible. Get the most out of the least. Then you can always add in more shit. And that comes with training volume, comes with activation interventions, comes with like me trying to do running right now alongside my weightlifting and muscle building. I say, okay, what's the least amount I can do and keep moving forwards with? And then if I feel good, I might try to add more in. But why would I want to add more shit in if I'm getting good results already?
Yeah.
You know, don't fucking ruin the recipe. Just keep going.
Do you feel like you have that approach to business? Because I feel like that could then be conflicting. Perhaps in the realm of business, you're not trying to do the least amount. Otherwise, you wouldn't have as much as you have or have built as much as you do, right?
No, you should want to do the least amount. Yeah. It's weird, but you should. If I want to do the most amount, I would not sleep. I would be doing so much shit right now. I would not be doing this podcast right now. Or I'd be doing this podcast and there would probably already be in the back of my mind ideas of how I can edit this up, how I can monetize this, how I can push it out on more platforms, how I can maybe live stream it right now, how I can put this onto YouTube live, how I can put it onto Twitch right now, how can I create more business opportunities from, how can I put sponsors into this, how can I make more money from this, how can I make my business grow from this, how can I get another collaborator in here right now. There are so many opportunities. It's like, you don't want to do that. Because again, more is not always better. It's noise.
But did you really think you got to the point you are now with all the success and the money and the influence that you have now with that approach? Like when you started off? Perhaps you have that thinking now, but
yeah, no,
when you began?
Yeah, like it wasn't my intention, but if I look back and backtrack over things, the reason why I succeeded so much at what I did was because I had the focus on whatever it is I was doing, and I was going hard on it. I wasn't just doing an event 3 times a year. I was doing an event 3 times a week for 3 years straight.
Yes. And that isn't doing, I think that's more I'm trying to like understand. It's like you didn't have the mentality to do the least amount then. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done 3 workshops a week, right?
Least amount of variety. But for me, every one of those workshops is one thing. It's money, so I can afford meat and a roof over my head. Yeah. But also it was, I'd go back and say, okay, I did that workshop yesterday. What can I improve for the next one? And then it was saying, hey, how can I get more reps in so I can learn more and refine the process even more?
Yeah.
So, but it was also intentionally saying no to doing more online coaching. And it was saying no to taking on coaches to work underneath me. It was saying no to a lot of other opportunities that could have conflicted with the one thing that I needed to do more of.
I see.
So yeah, I get what you mean where it kind of sounds conflicting or like I was doing more, not less. I see the less as the less noise and the more focus.
Yes.
But honestly, like it wasn't my intention. Like 5 years ago, I didn't have that plan. I wasn't saying I'm going to do the least amount possible. I was like, I'm just going to do whatever makes sense organically, whatever the world is demanding of me to teach or whatnot. But if I look back and say, okay, where were the big turning points in my business or my trajectory of what I do for social media or whatever, and it all came back to the more focus I had on the one thing and I stopped doing other shit, the better I got. And that's where I had big exponential growth. I didn't try to do 10 videos for YouTube, I tried to just do one video really well, even if it meant less volume, because it was probably going to be better.
Now that's what worked for you. You acknowledge at the same time. I imagine you would that just being savagely like daily content consistent can also be a very effective strategy too.
If you learn from it, if you have the ability to learn from every single one and improve every single one.
You have the ability to learn from it.
Some people don't. Like if I had a full media team, if I had editors, if I had videographers, if I had people who are taking care of all of that, and I can pump out the exact same quality and experienced learning from each one, but do it 10 times, for sure it's better. But I don't have that. So that would definitely help things.
Like what you're explaining there is like, I'm trying to do like a bit of arithmetic in my head here. So what, like, because before coming here, like I went through your profile again and I was getting nostalgic on some of the old posts. And I got to the old posts really quickly. Yeah. Much quicker than I thought, because I feel like you're in my face all the time.
I don't post much.
That's what I was going to say.
I never do.
Because by getting there so quick, I was like, what the hell? Like, why am I back here so quickly? Like, because
I was one scroll.
Feels like, and I'm like, has he deleted like a lot of posts? I'm like, I can't imagine Eugene.
I can't delete anything.
Yeah.
Like it's all on there.
So how do we feel like that? Like, how do I feel like I get more of you than you're putting out there? Is it stories? Is it?
One thing, it could be the stories maybe, because I'm on there. But even then, I don't put out a lot. Like I put out maybe 7 days in a week. I'll put out maybe 4 days. I'm actually doing stories. 3 days I'll be silent. Like yesterday, for example, complete radio silence, nothing. Today I'm posting on Instagram.
But when you grew and you were coming up, did you have that same pattern?
Yep, same thing. Where I was like, again, looking back saying, what's the benefit to me doing 100 stories in a row or every single daily posts when it's actually creating more noise and less engagement? And that was a really, really important factor. And I started asking myself, like and this may actually be a negative thing in some ways, but I'm very particular about, I want things to look really nice or be high quality. So I'm like, I can shoot it and get better lighting. Like I hate using my phone to film shit for my Instagram feed. It makes no fucking difference, but I care about it. I want to use my camera to film a video for Instagram, even though it makes zero difference. But I just want to look a certain way. That's my little anal retentive thing that I like things to look the way that I like to look at them. I thought, you know what? I could turn the exposure down a bit more. I could make the lighting better. I'll reshoot it tomorrow. That's been my mentality, which means it organically hurts my ability to create volume because I'm caring about those nitpicky things, which I maybe could argue don't need to care about. But yeah, I don't post much, and I realized it actually helped a lot more by not having to be there as much. And also, one beneficial thing that the social medias have changed their minds about over the last couple of years, like TikTok and Instagram specifically, is content is a lot more evergreen. You'll see this on your own feeds. Is you'll see a post come up on your page or whatever. It'll come up on your feed because you're being pushed out by the algorithm, and it was posted 6 months ago. It was posted 3 months ago. You're like, why am I being shared this post from Eugene from 3 months ago? And Instagram's like, it's a fucking banger post. You should like it. It puts shit out into your face. It doesn't care what the date was anymore. That's how YouTube works. YouTube will share with you whatever is going to serve you the best, keep you on the platform. Instagram and TikTok, or Instagram more important because TikTok's still quite new, but Instagram used to be all about relevance, what's happening right now. You do a post today, you're sharing in the moment, you're sharing your life right now, and then a week later, that's dead content. You could post the exact same thing again and it'll probably reach whole new eyes. But now, I can easily go into my notifications and I'll get probably 100 new followers, 2,000 new likes, 10,000 new views on a video I posted in December. It'll be top of my notification feed. That's how the feeds work. They reward quality because now they've realized, fuck, we have so much quantity, we can't just push the most latest stuff out top of the feed. People are disengaging. How do I put yourself into the minds of the company of Instagram? Their goal is to keep you engaged on the platform.
They're going back into the best hits.
They're going best hits. They're trying to, how can we keep you engaged? And it may be pulling out the old stuff that works better in their favor. They're doing that. So that wasn't my intention. But that's one thing I've noticed is that's probably why I'm coming up a lot more is because I have a lot of quality. And one thing to keep in mind from the algorithms, and I don't like talking about the algorithm as like it's sentient being or whatever, but it is kind of important to be thinking about human behavior as well, is when you like, comment, share, engage with something, of course it's a positive impression. When you watch something all the way through, even without engaging, it's a positive impression, and it's going to boost you up in the algorithm. If you scroll past something, that's a negative view. It's not a neutral view, it's a negative impression. That's my theory. I could be wrong. But I believe that if I see something on my feed, I see your post come up and I choose to scroll past, I don't give it versus giving it 2 seconds of scanning, I think that does impact things.
That blows the quality versus quantity argument like completely up then.
It means you need quality. It means, you need to make sure.
Poor quantity is actually...
it's hurting you. It's hurting you.
Yeah.
It's hurting you. So you got to make sure the quality is there. Doesn't mean you got to be like best of the best doing a full production Warner Brother movie for every single fucking Instagram post, but just make each post better than last. Try to make each thing you put out better communicated, more effective, more engaging in some way. Hopefully not outragey, but you can also understand why a lot of the outrage posts do so well because they trigger that emotion immediately, and you got to at least hover on the post and read it. Even if you don't agree with it, even if you hate it, it's still a positive impression, still going to grow their audience. The best thing you can do if you hate somebody is swipe past as quickly as possible or report the account and block them or something like that, you know? Because people think about it, oh, you double tap or you don't. No, even if you just scroll past, that's a negative. Again, this is purely theoretical, but it makes sense that it would be a negative impression because I've chosen to skip over you versus hovering on someone else's post.
And how you define quality and getting better is I've noticed two things. You reflect and you watch your videos back meticulously.
Yeah.
And you'll spend a lot of time editing, get someone else to watch it, and you'll listen to your audience and feedback.
Yes. Yeah. Because even if I like a video, I think it was done really well, Katrina likes a video, it was done really well, the audience will decide.
Yeah.
It's not the algorithm, it's the audience.
It's meritocracy.
And if it didn't do well, it's like, no, it wasn't because you posted at the wrong time of day. It wasn't because you didn't post every single day, because the content was fucking shit. Accept it and try to work out why it was shit. Was it the wrong angle, the wrong lighting, the wrong tempo, the wrong color, whatever? Fix it next time. And this is where it's exciting, but also it keeps me up at night and causes my hair to fall out. Because I'm like, I don't fucking know what it is.
This is what keeps them up.
Complex.
This is what keeps them up. We found it.
Oh.
Yeah, like I don't know what it is. Why did that tank? That should have been a fucking banger. Yeah. Or there were like 10 things as to why maybe it tanked. Oh, which one is it? I don't know. Maybe it's all 10. Maybe it's the market at the time doesn't care about re-adults anymore. I don't know. Yeah. It's
You just keep hammering.
keep hammering. I mean, what else are you going to do, you know? I look at it and you can take that defeatist attitude, like, oh, fuck it, I'll do nothing now. Or you can be excited. I do genuinely, it's a net positive excitement from it all. As much as it frustrates me, keeps me up at night, stresses me out, it's a net positive because when you do win, it's so rewarding. It is that dopamine, such a fuck yeah, you got it. It is literally the addiction.
We're just dopamine monkeys.
Oh, we are. And people talk about, you got to be disciplined, not motivation. You don't have to be disciplined. You got to be addicted. If you want to succeed at something, don't try to be disciplined to do your shit and do your workouts. Find a way to get addicted to training.
To make pain feel good and discomfort feel good.
Not even pain, but just to be addicted to whatever the process is where you'll happily go through the pain to go through that. Like think about it from the depths of a meth addict sucking dick on a street corner to be able to get their next hit. Okay. They're not happily choosing to go
Clip
through that
Donnie.
pain. they're not choosing that pain. They're saying, I'll do whatever it takes to get my next hit. No matter how painful, degrading, whatever it is, I will do it because I'm addicted. Now, if you can harness that power and not put it towards meth, but if you put it towards training or towards your health goals or whatever, then fuck yeah.
How?
You can't scroll past this guy's posts anymore. We know what's going to happen, where he's going to end up if you scroll past. Right? It's bad.
It's a bad spiral.
The future is bad. It's a bad spiral. Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you're on another level, man. Like with this social media.
I didn't
game.
realize how
I'm-
detailed he was.
I'm nowhere near any of those levels, so I'm taking a lot from today's discussion. It is a little bit overwhelming for me.
Ben, you're gonna have to rewatch all your videos meticulously. No, you know.
Yeah. One thing look, I think this will be relevant because I think that a lot of people watching this will be coaches and content creators. Like if you don't have, if you're a monkey like me and you don't have a skill set that like is involved in good production stuff like that, like what do you think the avenue is for like the average coach, for instance?
Outsource.
So that's what you would say?
It's very much worth outsourcing.
Yeah.
Who to? I don't know. Like I'm still trying to find videographers.
I don't understand why you don't. Money's not the problem, so it's the personnel and the
It's the personnel, it's the quality, it's the skill set. It's hard. And this is part of like why...
I don't know, if Hormozy can find good people, like...
And this is part of, I don't like to put limits and constraints on myself, but I say, fuck, we're not in the States. We're here in Australia where unfortunately there isn't as much demand for good creators, for good, not creators in my perspective, but creators in like videographers, editors. There are people out there who do edit, who do videos, who are in Australia, but the field itself is not competitive enough because it's not big enough. Again, 10-year-old kid says, hey, daddy, I want to be a YouTuber. In Australia, you're a fucking idiot. In the US, I'm going to buy you your first camera. Yeah. I'm going to hire you an editor. You're going to make $1 million, 10-year-old junior, because they can. It's a very different mentality because of just how big it is. And I think how big the audience is in general, because it's a much bigger population, but just how the platform has grown there for whatever reason that I don't even know. But there's just more demand for higher quality stuff. Where if I want to get a high quality video editor now or videographer now, usually they're the people who are doing they're doing corporate commercials and whatnot. And it's like, I don't actually need that. You're very good at what you do, but what you do is not what I need. There aren't many people who are doing what I need from the video skill set and having that lens. Yeah, you know how to do the right editing to do a car commercial or to do something that's going to go on Channel 7 for, I don't know, Coles supermarkets or whatever, but you don't know the pacing and the constraints that exist in the social media world. It's very different. And that's why it's up. I tell people, like, you got to hopefully try to outsource that wherever you can. Or honestly, just start and, create it for yourself. The reason why I've gotten so good is because I've had to learn it. Because I'm like, fuck, I can't just dump it on somebody and say, hey, make it good for me. I've got to work it out and figure it out. And it's just been reps. I started posting stuff to social media in 2010. When Instagram started doing videos in like 2011 or 12 or so, I was on that immediately, just playing with it and just doing it ever since then. Back when it wasn't kosher to film, I had to hide my phone in like a very inconspicuous area of the internet, try to get it set up perfectly to be able to film me still, make sure nobody saw me filming, because I felt so guilty and so bad and so awkward that I don't want to do this. And now it's, you bring a fucking production kit into the gym to film your fucking set of bicep curls. And that's normal. It's like, why didn't you do that? Yeah. Everyone should do that. No, that's why I think like we're in a, people complain a lot. It's like, man, you don't know how good it actually is now. There's a lot more opportunities. And even if you don't have those opportunities of hiring people, just jump on YouTube and you've got everything you need between your 2 ears just to start listening, observing, learning, fixing, addressing, improving in some way. And don't even try to compare it to my stuff or someone else's. Compare it to what you did yesterday. What could you do better?
Improve.
Yeah.
Outsource?
Outsource, maybe.
Donnie.
The
hired. He's hired. Just increase your rate, mate. Like, honestly, it is something where the supply is so incredibly low. There are so many videographers, but there are so many few good videographers, good editors who really understand this shit on a very, very deep level. In Australia, anyway. And that's the thing. It's like I can send my stuff to editors all around the world and say, hey, edit this for me. And they'll probably understand it, but there is something to be said about having the convenience of somebody who's right here, local, in your backyard. Yeah. They're going to show up and film it for you. They're going to film it the way they want to edit it. They're going to edit it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've actually I knew we were going to have this conversation well before even Ben and I met and we did KATABASIS, because I've been writing questions down that are just like, I'm a curious person, so I'll be writing questions down of like what I would ask you when I ever got the chance to.
Right.
And there's a lot of training and theoretical stuff out there, and that's great. We had a great conversation so far, but I mean, to me, that doesn't interest me as much. And I think people don't actually get to know you as a person, like who is Eugene? And I think a lot of the meaning and purpose in life and just a great conversation is found there. And like one of the things, there was a post you did, I think it was last year or something, about, your family and regret as well. And that was really thought-provoking to me. And I don't see you talk about that stuff often. I just wanted to ask you about, how did you become the person you are? Like, what was your upbringing like?
Very big question.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a typical upbringing you compare. Anybody says, typical upbringing in Asian household or whatever, or Greek household,
Greek and Egyptian.
yeah, Greek and Egyptian. There's no typical upbringing. As much as we like to think that there are stereotypes of Asians or Egyptians or Greeks or Italians or other ethnicities, there isn't really as typical as we like to think, or we think about the surface level stuff. For me, what really matters, and I think, is that I grew up as a small human who was young. I was put into school, and I was on average between 1.5 to 2 years younger than all the kids, which when you're 18, 19 makes no difference. But when you're like 4 years old, between 4 to 12 years old or so, it makes a huge difference, because that's when you're developing a lot. So I was spending most of my childhood very much behind developmentally from my peers who were in my same schools.
Why were you in school early?
I don't know. I think I was just bored of kindergarten or something.
Oh.
Yeah, one of those.
It wasn't a mistake or anything?
No. Like my parents wanted, I'd have to ask them, but like there is a certain cutoff in Australia of when you're allowed to be young for your year level or whatever. Somehow I snuck around that, and I was in a lot younger than I should have been. Or you shouldn't say should or shouldn't, but what the law stated. Because my birthday is in August, I shouldn't have been started in the school cohort when I did. If had my birthday been in March, it would have slid through fine. That makes a big difference. It doesn't sound like much, but these things have a big ripple effect. You can look at like what's that book by Malcolm Gladwell where he talks about
Outliers?
Maybe it's Outliers, where he talks about when you're born at certain times of the year, can have predispositions for sporting prowess.
Yeah, it's the one.
Not because January is so fucking good and it's blessed as the birthday, but because it means you're going to be developing faster than other people. Mm-hmm. You're going to get the early rewards, the early recognition. So I got the opposite of that. I got the opposite, where I was the person who was picked last. I was the person who was, even though I wasn't picked last because, I was picked last because I was physically less skilled and less able than a lot of my peers. I was somebody who was a lot more childish than a lot of my peers. And I was somebody who had to learn very quickly how to navigate that. And a lot of it was from respecting that, hey, you're a fucking idiot. And that you've got to grow up quickly. You've got to reflect on your behavior, because a lot of like what naturally comes to you in these developmental years anyway, and this is my theory on it anyway, so it might not be right. But whatever was coming to my natural instincts is probably not the best thing to do. because it doesn't fit in with the norm. Though it didn't fit in with the norm, but it made me grow up very quickly and made me become very self-reflective, very self-critical, and had this. I think everybody has a desire to fit in, and a need to fit in and to feel accepted, but I felt like there was a lot more going against me from that perspective. So I was like, okay, I've got to find ways to overcome that, and to even now, I'm sure like a lot of what drives my addiction isn't content creation. My addiction isn't business. My addiction isn't training. My addiction is the connections that it creates to other people, the impacts that it can have on other people.
Why is that important to you?
Because how I grew up, because I didn't have that growing up. You know, like that's looking at things from me in a childhood in my peer group, but there's also things from the family household where I wasn't having those same connections, or from the extended family or other friends or whatever it may be. I was like, you know what? I feel like I didn't have those relationships or connections, and that's part of what I'm sure is driving a lot of what I do to a greater degree than the average, where I think we all have that innate need to be accepted, connected.
So, I mean, I can understand. Well, actually, I'll let you maybe fill it in, but like I can understand how that would maybe get you ending up in the health field / fitness field. Like you're coming to people with like goals, and you know you hopefully got some expertise, and it's like face to face, right? You started off face to face, for at least I don't know how many years before you went to online. And even in online, you can cultivate these intimate relationships and things like that. But then it's obviously transitioned now into your reach is so large, so it's obviously a much different community and relationships, right? Is that something that you take away, like different things now from these relationships, or?
I'm not too sure about that actually. I don't consider that too much. I still get the same fulfillment from being able to have that kind of impact, although it is less of an intimate one-to-one. I'm working with you on a 12-week journey or a year-long journey as a client. It's more like I'm impacting people in a very positive way and having that impact. I think it's the same net positive to me, or the same benefit, the same itch that gets scratched for me, but in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Where it's impacting more people broadly as opposed to one person on a hyper-specific level. I don't know which one I would prefer, to be honest, because I think different.
And even in the middle, you had all the peers. You had all of us kind of coaches who would come to you, and you know, you're like 30 in a room. We do an intensive with you for 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So impact, I can see where some of this like impact comes from perhaps not being given a certain level of depth of connection and support growing up.
Yeah, like I'd like to say not given or you weren't getting, because you know what? There's very, that's my perception of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my rationalization of it. Chances are that it was always there. And chances are that I've just made up this whole story because that's what makes sense in my brain logically. I'm logically explaining my emotional behavior over the last 30 odd years. Don't know. That's my best rationalized guess right now as to what's driven a lot of what I do now and how I grew up. Where I know, there were some, I look at other families, I look at other friends I had, other, past relationships, like, their families that they were having, it's a much more close-knit family unit. It was, they had a lot more friends, a lot more socially accepted, and I wasn't. And that's part of why I took the path that I did in terms of learning, health, fitness, but also specifically, it's what really curbed my ego a lot. Where I was like, okay, the way to get ahead is I don't have the skill set to just be this world star athlete, this incredible famous musician or whatever who's going to have everyone screaming and chasing after him. What can I do? I can learn from other people who have done that, and I'll be more than happy to accept that I am at a deficit to you and your skills. I want to learn from you, and there is no ego. No matter who it is, I say, you know what? I'm very comfortable with the fact that I'm probably not going to be the smartest person, the strongest person, the best fit for whatever the job is, but I want to go to whatever rooms I can be to learn more from other people, and I will happily do that. That's something I've had from a very young age because I had to, because I wasn't the biggest, strongest, fastest, handsomest, most skilled. It's like, okay, how do I get those things? By learning from other people. Whereas imagine, alternate reality in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There was Eugene who was a year ahead of his peers in the same age group. I would have been more developed. I would have received very different praise, very different selection biases in a lot of what I did. Now, if you have that kid growing up, how much is that kid ever going to question himself? Like, fuck no, he's King Dick. He does what he wants. He's like, yeah, I'm the best at everything. I get all the praise from everybody. I accept it all. I'm so far ahead of everybody else. I am more mature. I am more skilled. I am stronger. I am fitter. I am more knowledgeable because my brain is more developed because I'm a year ahead of all you motherfuckers. Of course I'm going to be better. And you're going to believe you're impressed. And you get more praise. It becomes that Malcolm Gladwell self-fulfilling prophecy where you get the rewards, you get better because of it, because of that upbringing. And that would have led to a very different me now, where I would definitely not be as self-critical. I would not be pushing myself as hard to create those same connections because I take them for granted instead. We're like, fuck yeah, everyone loves me all the time. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can just, do whatever the fuck I want and not care about those ramifications. Not that those are the two extremes. They're the two maybe extremes and there's a gray area in between.
Yeah.
But that may be the other outcome. And that's, we can hypothesize on that and for as much as you want, but that's what I think is I've been able to leverage that into a strength and say, okay, I'm aware of it. I know what's helping me and what's helped me and why I've got the edge that I have. And who cares why it came about? The fact is I've got it now. It's a very powerful thing to have, being able to ask for help.
Yeah. So you leveraged your kind of upbringing and experience to your advantage in a way.
Yes.
You recognized it's the flaw of it and you leveraged it to your advantage, and you are here partly because of that.
Yes.
Which is great and amazing. But then there's another factor that influences that, and that's our parents.
Yes.
And you put your mum in your videos.
Yeah.
Which is great. You seem like you have a good relationship with them. But our parents, inform and influence a lot of who we are and who we become or who we don't want to become. What's been from your mother and father, like what's been some of the most powerful lessons that they've taught you?
It's a good question. From mum, a very easy answer is, she taught me hard work and perseverance because she was somebody who was, she was taking care of us, and my dad was quite sick from when I was very young, so he wasn't working much. So she was the main breadwinner. She was the provider. She was putting us through private schools and just showing up all the time. It's like, it's hard work, but I'm not even sure if that's the one lesson. Like I don't even know what it is that I would have taken away from her because there's so much. Like that's a very easy thing I can say. Yeah, that's definitely one thing that she's taught me. But I think that's too surface level, too easy as an answer, or I couldn't tell you. But I can tell you, like for my dad, for instance, there wasn't an explicit lesson I learned that he taught me, where from him saying, "Hey, this is how you act" or whatever. It was a lot through his inactions, or through his his accidental actions that weren't directed at me that I had to observe and be like, oh, okay, this is some lessons I've learned about how to not take things too seriously, or how to just always show up no matter what. The kind of thing, like he's someone who received a death sentence on his life when he was my age right now. It was like, yeah, you got like a few years to live.
What was it?
An AVM. So it's imagine you have like all the veins and arteries in your brain that are supplying them with oxygen-rich blood and nutrients, and instead of being like a really nice highway, it's all like fucking tangled like a spaghetti soup. It's a mess. That's what was happening in his brain. So I was like, yeah, like imagine hearing that death sentence. Like imagine today, the way I only learned like after his passing how it happened. They were all out with their friends, mum and dad, at dinner somewhere, and mum was like, "You're limping," and he was like, "No, I'm not." And she thought she's just joking around because he does that. He fucks around a lot. She's like, "No, you're limping." And I was like, "Yeah, I've had this headache a little bit for a little while." And they investigated and they've realized what was going on. Like I had brain scans, like, oh shit. Imagine it happened to you and you've been told like right now, yeah, this is your issue and you've got a very bad prognosis. Maybe a few years is going to progress, and this is what the outcome of your progression is going to look like. It's going to be a deterioration in your mental capacity, in your executive functioning, in your motor control, in everything. That's fucking terrifying. How would you react to that? I don't know how I would react to that. I don't think you can answer that right now. It's like something that you can say a lot of different ideas, but you won't necessarily know until you actually get.
How do you think he reacted?
I believe he would have reacted very like, "Fuck, this sucks," and he would have verbally said, "This is a shit situation." You'd cry, be emotional, you'd be upset about it, but it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what you did. And the fact is, he was still there for every single day as much as he could be, showing up and doing whatever he could to the best of his capacity. Would I have done that personally? I don't fucking know. I can look back at some of my history and some of my instances of when I've received bad news or whatever. How do I act in those situations? Do I just show up no matter what? Do I hold grudges? Do I get upset? Do I get emotional? Maybe. Would he handle it differently? I don't know. But the fact is, like, he, in those situations, I can see from the way that he shows up, he had showed up to the best visibility every single day. That was all I needed to know. You know, like of how he is a person, how you should be, or like a benchmark for me to strive towards as a person of like, yeah, you received this horrible news, but you just got to show up no matter what. What's the other alternative? It's kind of like we were saying before. It's like, oh, you can take the fact that there's so much to know out there, so much conflicting information, so much just fucking around and finding out. You can either just let that push you to a point of nihilism where you're just like, oh, fuck, what's the point? Let's do nothing. Or you can be like, okay, let's just get our hands dirty and start getting into it and just do the best that we can each day. And I think whether I agree or disagree with a lot of what he did growing up, I do believe that both him and my mum have always done the best they could. That's it. I think that's all you can ask of any human. And I look back at myself and I say, in every single circumstance, in every single instance that I've been presented to in my life, with relationships, with business, with my work, with everything else, have I always chosen to do the absolute best that I can do on every single day? And I can't say yes to that. There's many, I can't top of my head right now, but I can say there's many instances where I look back and say, you know what, that situation, I was not showing up at my absolute best. I could have handled that better. I could have been more diligent. I could have done more research. I could have handled my emotions better. I could have whatever. But I can say, for whatever it was, in that one random instance, I did not handle myself in my best absolute performance, best shape possible. And it sucks, but it's also just like, cool, don't fucking do that again. When that situation comes up or the opportunity comes up, you know better. You know what that pain of regret feels like. Fix it. Or at least try to fix it. And I think, as much as I think my dad was showing up every single time the absolute best as he could, was he really? He probably was in the same position as I was. We're all human. We always want more.
So what's your pain of regret from growing up?
Fuck, there's so many.
I think, I can't remember the particular, the exact context, but there was one with your father. I mean, it's on the topic. When he was sick.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember we were having this really little argument about the printer. I had to print something out, printer wasn't working, and there was some random argument. Whatever happened, it wasn't that bad, but I was like, I'm not going to talk to him anymore until he apologizes. Because in my mind, it probably was, he was wrong at that point, and he should have apologized, he should have done something differently. But for whatever it was, I believe that I was slighted, and I was like, I'm going to hold this grudge until he apologizes. That was the last time I spoke to him consciously, when he was conscious. And that was like 10 years, where he was still, 10, 15 years. He was still alive, living on the same roof. Didn't say a word to him. Would ignore him. And that was it. Because I held a grudge. So one of my biggest regrets is holding a grudge. The only time I really got to speak to him, by that point, it was I wouldn't say it was too late, but I felt in some ways it was. Because at that point, he was in a home. He was not completely coherent. I could talk to him. Was he really understanding me? I don't know. So I regret.
That's such a long time to hold a grudge too.
For sure.
So
I'm so good at it.
Do you remember, how long ago was this?
I would have been like 15, 14. So 15 is a long time
ago. Do you remember and you said 10 years, right? So that's such a long time.
Yeah.
Do you remember having moments throughout it going why am I holding this grudge? Or are you just kind of
No, I was like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Do you not say I'm sorry? Fuck it. And then it became a habit. I was just like, I'm not going to talk to you. I can't remember why. Yeah. I'm telling you now, I can't remember the argument. I remember it was about a printer maybe. I can't remember what the decision was or what the outcome was. Maybe there was a sorry. I didn't even hear it. I don't know. Or there were subliminal sorries, where he was saying sorry in his own way that I didn't really pick up. But I look back and I say, look, there are so many times in my life where I've held those grudges against people, where I've been slighted in some way, unintentionally or intentionally. And I've been like, you know what? I'm going to hold a fucking grudge against this and never speak to you ever again. Like, what's the point?
Do you, I got a question here, right? So, because I feel like all of us have those moments, especially when you're younger, right? Where you go, I'm going to hold a grudge.
Yeah, feels good.
I don't know, because I've never been able to hold a grudge for very long. No matter how determined I've been to hold a grudge.
Let me teach you a thing or two.
This is what I want to know. So you mentioned your father, and obviously this is this is just an epic story, really, because it goes over decades.
You're right.
But what I want to know is, like you say, you've done it like with other people. Like, is there other people out here that, you know, is the grudge ongoing for 2 decades?
No. Now there's nothing. Now there's nothing. But I can look back on some of the grudges that did hold. Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was in a PT or whatever, I'd say, oh, some of those grudges, they were really, I don't hold that. If I saw those people now, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, it's water on the bridge, I don't care. But back then I was like, wow, you held a lot of pain. You create a lot of anxiety for yourself for no reason, for no beneficial outcome. You were not showing up at your best. You could have handled that better. So make it better. And the first part to make better, I was like, hey, get rid of that grudge. If I saw that person today, whoever it was, I'd be like, yeah, cool. Water on the bridge. Let's get on and move on. And even to the point of saying, I admit I was a dick back then. I could have handled it better. I shouldn't hold that grudge against you or whatever it was. And they can accept it. They cannot accept it. Doesn't matter. It's the way it is. As long as I can sleep at night and live with that and know that have I shown up to be my absolute best that I can today? And I'm going to do that again tomorrow. As long as I can at least strive to do that, I will fuck it up. Every single time. Just like we fuck up in training every single time. I want to get stronger every single day. I'm still going to fuck up my reps and miss my sets. Yeah. It's the exact same thing.
My brother and I held a grudge for about 6 months once. That was the extent of it.
Right.
And my mother and I held a grudge for about 3 months once. But yeah.
I think there's, now looking back and I was like, what's the point? Like who benefits from it? Nobody benefits from it. I think, I'm going to punish them and I'm going to be one up by holding that grudge. I mean, half the time in those instances, they didn't even know they had a grudge against them. They didn't fucking know. So all I've done is I've created this grudge in my mind. So on the off chance that I see them in the future, I'm going to have anxiousness and resentment towards them and they don't even know about it. Like, who's that serving? It's not serving me at all. It's not helping me. Why am I doing it? It's so self-destructive, but we do these things all the time. Yeah.
How did you let it go and then forgive yourself if you did?
I'm just accepting that you're human. I just think the fact is we are all going to screw those things up, and because we're not aware of what we're actually doing. We're acting we always, as much as we try to be logical, we are always going to be emotional, reactive beings who are going to try to rationalize shit after. Even now, as much as I can try to have a logical self-awareness lens on it, I know it's me rationalizing a lot of my behavior. That's all we can do. So, I mean, I just stopped caring as much and realized about those grunts, saying, you know what? If I can't even remember why I'm angry at you or why I pushed you away or whatever in the first place, why should I continue to do that? And also, who benefits from this? Do I actually benefit from this? Is it worth my time and effort and my energy to be worrying about this? It probably isn't. So let's stop doing that. And then hopefully try avoid doing it in the future. But I'll fuck it up. I know I will.
And you accept that?
I accept that. That's part of life.
With your upbringing being, Eastern culture, Asian culture, I know that can be, you can grow up in a very traditional and strict household where your self-esteem isn't exactly cultivated to be all that you can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Has that been an accurate experience for you, or a bit different?
Yeah. Look, it's always layers to it. We got beat as kids. We had a lot of fear in our lives as kids, but also, a lot of my success I can put down to my mum, where she's believed in me. She's like, yeah, you know what? You want to start working in the gym? I'll help support that. I'll help, push you for that. Yeah, you can do all these things. There was a lot of belief there. They wouldn't invest time and effort. They wouldn't want to put me in a private school if they didn't believe in me, for better or worse. They wouldn't care about those things if there wasn't belief. So, yeah, it was tough. I think everyone's childhood is tough in its own aspects. What was the question?
Self-esteem.
Oh yeah, did
Eastern
that
culture.
Yeah, so it's like, on one hand, you're getting all this punishment. We used to, and that's going to cripple your self-esteem. It's going to cripple your confidence. My brother and I, when we'd fight, our father, he would put tape over our mouths. Tape, like sticky tape. So he'd stop talking, and make us go out in public, like that. Like we'd play tennis on the weekends. We have to wear tape over our mouths. That's public shaming. You're amongst all your kids, your peers. And like, why is your mouth taped shut? We couldn't tell them why, because their mouths are taped shut because we're being fear of being beaten again. And it's like, well, we're going to people aren't physically laughing at us, but you can't not feel self-conscious in that. You're going to chats and you're going to the shops. You got tape on your mouth. Even though your dad's out of eyeshot, you've got that fear of God in the back of your mind. You don't dare take that tape off while you walk around the shops on your own, window shopping and whatnot. You got tape on your mouth. How is that going to benefit somebody's confidence and their self-esteem? Probably not. But at the same time, I can also say, hey, there was a lot of love, there's a lot of belief. They're doing the best that they can. They really supported a lot of what I did. You know, it's hit and miss. So it's, whatever it is, I mean, it's somehow been a net positive, I think. I've got pretty good self-esteem now, I like to think.
Not many people make it out from that.
For sure.
They hold on to a lot of that and they become,
Sure.
They stay the same small, weak, low self-esteem person forever. And then they carry that onto their children.
Yeah.
How did that not happen to you?
I don't know. Yeah, lucky. Maybe therapy. Don't know.
You did do that?
Yeah, I did done a bit of therapy. That was more for breakups though. But
Okay.
it's all related.
Yeah.
You know, it's all related. Everything you do is like you learn about training is going to help you in life with business. It's I don't know what it is where I don't. I'm sure it does affect me still in some ways that I'm not even aware of. Don't know. It's just a part of my story. One thing I think is important is I used to try to. I read this quote somewhere is like a lot of people try to rip out chapters to their story. It's like, well, no, those things have happened for a reason. Like, you can't try to deny yourself of your history, of your upbringing, of whatever it is. And if you rip out that chapter, you rip out those lessons. You rip out the ability to heal or to grow from them. So a lot of people like suppress, or they don't talk about shit, or they push it aside, or just say, no, it didn't happen to me, or they just, I'm stoic because of it. It's like, no. Stoicism isn't about ignoring your hardship and doing shit and working through it anyway. It's about actually analyzing and going through your upbringing, your hardships, and growing from it. And accepting that life sucks. Life is struggling. Life is about suffering to a degree. And it's about flourishing because of that and striving through it and accepting both the highs and the lows. You can't have the highs without the lows.
So what's the greatest amount of struggle or hardship you've experienced in your life?
Nothing significant.
Nothing significant?
I don't think so. If you think about,
well, for you,
we live pretty cushy lives. You know, if the worst thing that I've really got to think about is the fact that I was caned as a kid, or I was bullied a little bit, it's like that's pretty good upbringing. You know, as much as I can say it was fucked at the time, I didn't enjoy it. It's like, man, there's some pretty shit stuff happening out there in the world. So I think having perspective on what is happening in the world can be helpful in that. I'm like, you know what? We've got a roof over our heads. We get to have some luxuries in life, even in our upbringings. It's really that bad. I'm not sucking dick on the street corner for meth. It's not that bad.
Yeah. How'd you get that perspective? Because a lot of people really milk their story as a justification for their misery or their life.
I don't want that. I've tried that.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried being like, oh, the brooding, wounded, oh, I'm so hurt. I'm just, you know, I'm tough. I've been through all this. You don't know what I've been through. My dad would tape my mouth shut. What'd your dad do? You punk, you know? Shake your hands,
Yeah,
you know?
You compare suffering.
It's like, who benefits from that? No one. Especially I don't benefit from that. What's the point? So I was like, it's not worth having that. It's not a cool badge of honor to have.
Yeah.
A cooler badge of honor is to be like, look what I'm fucking doing. Look what I can do. I'm excited by the shit that I do every single day. I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about, oh, you know, I had a bad upbringing and this is why I'm more important than you. No one fucking, everyone's going through their own shit. Everybody's got their own shit going on. You know, you see enough of that from other people, from talking to other people, from realizing, wow, you've got it really fucking rough. Even like, you can look at my dad and say, look, you know what?
Yeah, what about him?
Like he had a pretty rough time. And like, so who am I to judge?
Do you know about that?
About his upbringing
Yeah.
specifically? No, I don't know about his upbringing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But even saying like, you know, his diagnosis, like, fuck, that's a pretty fucking hard thing.
Yeah.
The fact that I don't have a diagnosis, you know, knock on wood to this day, that's pretty fucking good. I should be happy with that. I can't complain. I don't have that death sentence put over me.
Yeah, it's perspective.
For sure. And you know, you can only gain that by experiences, learning from other people, seeing what they've gone through, going through your own shit. You know, you don't want to be mollycoddled and bubble wrapped through life. You want to experience all these things and feel these emotions and feel these things from these stories from other people, so you can realize that, hey, you know, life sucks, but it sucks for everybody. Everyone goes through their own different hells. You know, we're all playing the same game, we're on different levels, and that's about it. And we're all going through very similar kinds of hells, very similar kinds of just traumas, hardships, whatever. They're different faces, different people involved, different circumstances, but it's all hell. It all sucks. But we can get through it.
How? Like, what do you tell those people going through it? Because Ben and I have a lot of those clients we work with on an intimate level that we see that hell. You know, for those listening who are going through their own version of it.
You're not alone. Not alone. There is a quote that I really love. I think I kind of paraphrased it already. It's same. We're all playing the same game, different level, same hell, different devils. We're all equal in this. No one gets out of this like winning. We're all got our own shit. Okay, I make a lot more money than I did 10 years ago. Let's say I make 10 times the amount of money. I do have 10 times, if not 100 times, the amount of problems because of it as well, of managing that, of managing the amount of people I take care of through Gambaru, the impact I can have, the stress that keeps me up at night about those kinds of things. Like I'm thinking about, hey, 10 years ago, I had no reputation. I could do whatever the fuck I wanted to.
You didn't have a lot to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Yeah.
And that's something that can be scary. It's not scary. It's like, it is what it is. You know, I'm just not going to be an idiot. Hopefully. We'll see. But no matter where you're at in life, we're all going to have our own set of unique issues, problems, and they're going to feel like the biggest fucking issues in the world. But the fact is you're not alone in dealing with that shit. You know, it may be the most significant part of your life right now, whatever it is that you're going through, but I guarantee you other people are going through their own version of that. And if you compared it, if I compare my pain to your pain, maybe we can objectively justify that your pain is worse than my pain, but it doesn't matter because what matters is how you frame that pain. It's the worst thing happening in your life, the worst thing happening in my life. All that matters is that we are all going through the same shit, so be kind to each other. And we can all help each other out. This is, again, what are my missions with the industry? What are my missions with life? It's autonomy, self-sufficiency, it's collaboration. The fact that we can do that is by accepting each other and saying, hey, fuck, we are all going through the same kind of shit. You can let that cripple you, or we can all just be a little bit empathetic, a little bit patient, a little bit helpful wherever we can, and just try to do good as much as possible and try to just do our best. There's a reason why my company, my brand, or I resonate so much with the word Gambaru. It's not because it's some cool sounding Japanese word, it's because it's always about doing more than one's best. No matter the circumstance, it's not perseverance and working hard and showing grit and grinding out those reps. So no, it's saying, here's where you're at. This is your absolute best. You want to do more than that. You want to strive to be more and to become more. And no matter the circumstance, there's a reason why I have that as my label. So it's a reminder of like, this is what it takes. And this is life.
Who taught you that?
I don't know. Life. Life taught me that.
Yeah, it does that.
Yeah. It was never a lesson of someone saying, hey, this is what life is all about, kid. But it was just a collection of whatever experiences I had made me rationalize my ways of dealing with them by coming to this outcome saying, yeah, this is what life is about to me. It's about empathizing with others and their pains. And again, I always fuck it up. I lose my patience with people. I cut them down. I lose patience with myself. But as long as I can do my best to recognize it and learn from it every single day, I can sleep at night. I'm happy at night. I can keep moving forwards. And it's best that we can always ask of each other.
Yeah. I heard on the relationships front there, I heard this really good quote yesterday that I read, which was relationships are all about connection, disconnection, repair, and repeat. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And I thought like just looking at and it was talking about like kind of like just like problem solving and like, cultivating like healthy relationships and stuff like that. And I think we all go through that with like the various relationships in our life is like, this like you connect, you go apart, and it's like, I think what everyone's like, what sort of separates like the maintenance of those relationships is like how quickly you can turn into that repair phase. You know what I mean? Like It's just because, as we talked about grudges before. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like that's literally like go and fuck repair. But like, that repair work with someone, like with your relationships, and it's about like letting go of like, you know, the barriers that you put up, like, you know, when you're getting into that disconnect and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought it was a good quote.
Yeah. I think a simple way for people to start to get on board with these kinds of ideas is to take a very selfish approach and ask yourself, what do you have to gain? Because we're always going to be self-centered, and that's fine. You know, that's how we are as humans. The way that you can sort of harness all this stuff toward your advantages, ask yourself every single time from these interactions, what do I have to gain from acting this way? And that's how you can sort of really personalize things, and it can hopefully push you in a positive direction.
Because we always care about our self-interest.
Absolutely.
Above
Absolutely.
anyone else.
And that's not a bad thing. You know,
survival.
you should want that. You should want that as a human. It's something that it'd be kind of psychopathic if you didn't. It'd be like it's against our genetics, evolutionary upbringing to not have our self-interest at heart. And that can be used in a very negative way as well. But hopefully people have the right intentions. They're able to harness that for the positive.
As you have done.
I like to think so.
Nah,
I think it's a process.
100%. Like what comes across in how the way you communicate, and even how like we've spoken over the last few hours now, and how you communicate on social media, is you have a like you seem like one of the kindest, like warm-hearted, like but empathetic and just good people. You just seem like a really good person, and someone who's really worked at being a good person and really cares about being a good person. It's something you seem very mindful of, and it's very it's nice to see, and I'm appreciative of it.
Thank you. Appreciate you recognize that.
Yeah.
I think it's all we can ever strive to be.
Eugene, unless you got anything else.
Oh man, I'm good.
Thank you. Do you have any last thoughts, asks, anything on your minds that you want to share?
No, I'm very, very content.
Actually,
Go on.
yeah,
Before the cameras turn off, get it in.
you're content.
Content.
So why keep working?
I enjoy it. And there is something that is beyond me. You know, it's that self-actualization. I don't even know, but it's where there is something beyond me. There is something that I'm content. Cool. A lot of other people aren't. Can I help those people? Probably. Do I enjoy that process? Yeah. If I didn't enjoy that process, or if I didn't think that I could help those people and I was content, then cool, I'd stop working. But it's like, no, I can see.
You still can help and be of service.
For sure. And that's, you know, I think it was Ali. Service to others is the rent that you pay for living on earth. That's all we can ever do. Serve others.
It's a beautiful way to end. Thank you, Eugene.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate you.